A hearty good morning to one and all present here. We welcome you to Day 3 of Typography International Conference 2014. Day 2 was a great success and we hope that Day 3 follows suit. I am Sanjana Dora.
And I am Vignesh Swaminathan.
And we are your hosts for today.
Without further delay, we would like to welcome our first keynote speaker for today. Professor James Craig, designer, author, and teacher, is from the USA. He is a renowned author of books on graphic design, including Basic Typography, a design manual. He was a design director of Watson Guptill publication for more than 25 years. James Craig would be talking about fundamentals of typography, student projects in typography and culture. We would now like to welcome Professor James Craig on stage.
Number 20, yep, okay.
I want you to be on stage throughout the presentation. Just help and assist, sir. Alright? Yeah.
Thank you, and good morning to everyone. First, I'd like to say how pleased I am to be here. It's been a wonderful occasion to meet old friends and to make new friends. I'd like to thank SD for the opportunity to share with you what I have learned from almost a half a century of teaching and writing about typography and culture. As a professor of graphic design at Watson Guptill Publications, teaching typography was my prime interest. At the same time, my secondary responsibility, which I took upon myself, was to make sure the students were aware of our rich cultural heritage. How I accomplished this is what I would like to share with you today. So let's begin with the title, Typography and Culture, and beginning with culture. According to the dictionary, culture is the arts and other manifestations of intellectual achievements. I believe that graphic design, visual communication, commercial art, or whatever you want to call it, qualifies as an intellectual achievement and therefore as a culture with a long, rich heritage. Typography, on the other hand, presented a slight problem. According to the same dictionary, typography is the art of setting, arranging printed types. Well, if we go by that definition, we must begin our discussion with Gutenberg in the 15th century. And for me, that was rather limiting and also much too late in the evolution of our profession. So I prefer to think of typography more broadly as communication through letter forms and as an important part of our culture. So where does our culture begin? How did we get to where we are today? And what does a bent twig have to do with today's topic? Well, I'll tell you. I begin our cultural heritage began a long time ago. One could make the case that our story begins in prehistoric times when some anonymous, primitive hunter bent a twig in order to visually mark a trail. Think of it as early signage, or an example of a visual language. Other examples of our early visual language can be found on the walls of prehistoric caves like Lascaux, with the strange graphic markings and symbols, and an ox. Now, what does an ox have to do with our culture? Another wonderful part of our story is the use of the phonetic alphabet by the ancient Phoenicians. As a nation of traders and merchants, the Phoenicians needed a simplified writing form that would allow them to keep better business records. So around 1200 BCE, the Phoenicians developed a new concept in written communication. They realized that they had about 22 major sounds in their language. So they decided to assign a symbol to represent each sound. At that time, a revolutionary idea. They began with the sound found at the beginning of their word for an ox, aleph. So when assigning a symbol for that sound, they used the existing symbol for the ox, which by now was just the head and horns. This later became our letter A. Next, they did the same thing for the sound at the beginning of their word for house, Beth. This became our B. Most symbols were based, the process was continued until all the sounds in their language had symbols. Most symbols were based upon common elements such as water, door, fish, hand, eye, mouth. There will be more about this subject later when we get to the 6 projects that I will be introducing. Whoops. Here we see the evolution of our alphabet on stone tablets from cuneiform, Phoenician, Greek, and finally to the Roman letter forms as inscribed on the Trajan columns in the 2nd century AD. In addition to the bent twigs and stone tablets, here are just a few more cultural landmarks worth noting. Illuminated manuscripts of the Middle Ages, Gutenberg's invention of printing from movable type, an invention that changed history, the evolution of typeface design, there'll be more on that later, an introduction of advertising in the 19th century, for better or worse, graphic design as a recognizable profession in the 20th century, and of course the digital explosion for all media, type, print, web, video, mobile devices, technologies with which you are too familiar, all a rich part of our culture. Now the question is, how does one bring this knowledge to the students when one's primary responsibility is teaching typography? My solution was to integrate culture and typography into the graphic design projects. I created a 1-semester course at the Cooper Union called Typo 1, An Introduction to Typography. The course was built around 2 of my books, Designing with Type and 30 Centuries of Graphic Design. Today I would like to share with you 6 of the 12 projects from Designing with Type that I believe are relevant to today's topic. The 6 projects range from the basics to experimental, from serious to humorous. They are early letter form, grids, visually enhanced quotation, experimental typography, personal poster, and ransom note. However, before reviewing the 6 projects, I must put all this into context by walking you through the early classes of the semester where the fundamentals of typography are introduced, a necessary prerequisite to working on the projects. Students come to class with their printed copies of Designing with Type. I do this because if you're not well organized, you leave it up to the students to pick up the book. It could be you can lose a whole day of classes because they don't have the book. I also prefer that the students read the chapters that I will cover. We read the chapters in class, so that way I know that they are being read by the students. If you give it as a homework assignment, they may or may not read it. So all of these things one develops over the year of teaching, tightening up a course. This worked very well for me. So we start with the basics of typography, and these are spreads from the book itself. So we start with the origins of the alphabet, and you can see we start from the pictographs or pictograms to right through the basics. Then we go through on the right-hand side, you can see going from the Phoenician all the way through to Gutenberg and the printed types. So in 4 pages, say roughly 3 columns of type, they have the basics of the origins of the type. Next, we go to the type terminology, which is which we discussed again in the class. How typeface names came around, type styles, the various type styles of typefaces. Then you get the fonts of type and the type measurements, the traditional display sizes, and then how the X height affects the various type sizes. Then you get into line spacing, leading or line spacing, letter spacing, and then you have we go into the 5 classic typefaces. Designing with type is based on the introduction of 5 classic typefaces, which the students have to work with for the first semester, with exceptions made when they can make a great case why they want to use another typeface. But if the students can design with these 5 typefaces, this is the history of the evolution of typeface design. Garamond, old style, Baskerville, Garamond, French, old style, Baskerville, English transitional, Bodoni, Italian modern, Century expanded, American, Egyptian, slab serif, Helvetica, Swiss. So if you ask any designer to name 10 or 20 of their favorite typefaces, you'll find probably 2 or 3 of those names on their list. So this focuses the students. That way they don't have to think about, there are so many ugly typefaces today, as you probably know. So this way it gives them a solid foundation in what is a well-designed, elegant typeface. So again, you get the characteristics of the typefaces, the 5 typefaces, what you look for to identify a typeface. And you get an overview in 6 pages of each of these 5 typefaces. This is Garamond, what makes Garamond Garamond, a small bio at the bottom, the display type with the significant letter forms that are different than others, introduction of small caps. Then you get the traditional display sizes, and then you show that the text sizes with varying amounts of line spacing or leading. And then, of course, the same thing for Baskerville, Bodoni, Century, Helvetica. At the end, this is all on the first day. This is all the first day of class, 4-hour class. Then, in the book, they have these 5 typefaces, and they have to identify the 5 typefaces based on what we've already discussed. To help the students out, I usually give them one hint. I tell them which one is Helvetica. That's very generous of me, I think. Now the projects, the 6 projects. What I will be showing you are solutions by the students from the Cooper Union, where I taught the course for 30 years, and where I give workshops around the world. This is in 2012, Ljubljana in Slovenia. This is Gothenburg, Sweden, and just recently in Athens, Greece. Now, what I want to bring to your attention, which when I was, if you're over 40 or 50, maybe even 60, when I was a student at Cooper Union at Yale Graduate School, we were predominantly male, 10 male, 2 female. In teaching for 30 years, I've seen it go from predominantly male to 50-50 to predominantly female. If you look at the classes, Slovenia, no question about it. Gothenburg, Sweden, and Athens, Greece, and I'm sure it's the same thing in graphic design schools around the world today, which I think is wonderful. Early letter form project from the Cooper Union. Now, I want to say a few words about the project so you put it into context for you. First of all, this project was started over 30 years ago before computers. So originally, it took the student from copywriting all the way through to the printed piece. So you can see you have the 2 alphabets. You have the Phoenician alphabet and you have the Greek alphabet. Students had to choose one letter from the alphabet. They had to do research on the letter form with 500 words, write about that letter form. Could be serious, could be funny, didn't matter, as long as it made sense. The format, it was a 2-color job, 25 centimeters by 25 centimeters. And the students had to do, in those days, they had to type up the copy, double-spaced. They kept one copy with a name on it. The other copy went to a professional proofreader, so it would be proofread. They had to do 3 designs. There are 3 elements involved. There's like the name Delta, there's the symbol Delta, and there's the 500 characters, plus or minus, that they had to write. I wanted each of the designs to be different. I wanted each element, if you looked at the 3 designs, the symbol was the most important element, the display type was the most important element, the text type was the most important element. I would remind them that I know if you want to make something important, make it big. I know that if you decide making it big, make it red. That usually works. But I said try to do something beyond the obvious by position, by all different, come up with some different kinds of solutions. The following week, they would bring in the 3 designs. We have a class critique where everybody contributes. The nice thing about 3 designs, when students do one design, if the student is very sensitive and the design gets shot down, they can end up in tears. The wonderful thing about 3 designs, everybody can talk about them. They choose one design that they feel is the best design. They enhance that based on the critique. Meanwhile, the copy comes back from the proofreader with all these strange squiggles and proofreader marks, which the students, I feel, have to be familiar with. Now, I know that in some places they figure, well, students don't need proofreading marks today because everything's on the computer and for whatever reason. This is a double-page spread from the proofs from Designing with Type, the 5th edition, which was about 7 years ago. I'm a professional. I designed the book, I laid out the book, and still you look at all those questions. Now you can imagine a student getting this back from the publisher, and they have to interpret that. So they go to Designing with Type, and you have a page which shows all the proofreading marks. So now they take their copy, spelling mistakes, grammatical errors, and spelling mistakes, grammatical errors you must change. If it's a suggestion and grammatically correct, then the student makes the decision. So that is the. Now the students have they got the design, and then they have to prepare a mechanical. In the olden days, we sent that to the printer. They got proofs back, and then the job was printed, and each student got a folio of the entire class's work with their name on it and the year. Now, this is from the Cooper Union. And I'll go through these rather quickly because we're limited in time, and I do have a lot of images to show you. But I think you'll get an idea of the level. These are second-year students. You get an idea of the level of the quality of the designs. And at the end, I'll tell you how you can see some of these in your own leisure. Mem. That one's completely letter-spaced, all the text, beautifully like a grid work. For me, the readability was not the most important thing. We did talk about the importance of readability, but I gave them great license that the design in this case was important. If it's readable, that's almost a plus. And one of my students was from India, and she said, would you mind if I did one of the letters from our alphabet? Which I said, no, absolutely no problem. And I believe this is Om, right? How's my pronunciation? Okay, so you get the idea for that project. Now, a friend of mine, An Sang-soo, who's one of the top designers in Korea, had seen the project, and he asked if I would mind if he gave the project to his students, which was kind of strange because, like, I have a copyright on the project. I said, no, I'd be flattered. I wish you would do that. So these are the same project, and you get a difference of cultural difference in the sophistication of the designs. Second-year students. Now, the next project, grids obviously for publication design. I used that as a basis for introducing Gutenberg and the introduction of printing from movable type. So how I did that is I gave them all a standard grid. These are the opening spreads, by the way, from Designing with Type. So I gave them the grid. Again, I tried to direct most of the projects. I try to give them very strict guidelines so they don't have to decide, well, maybe I'll do a 4-column grid, maybe I'll do a 2-column grid. So this way, I just want them to focus on making something work typographically. So for this project, I gave them I gave them the art. And you have the Gutenberg Bible. You can see all the parts of Gutenberg, and they have to work with these elements. And I'll just show you. This is from the book, showing you how different ways the spreads work. There's using the grid, and that's without the grid supporting it. But again, I gave them the text. They had to write the heads, and they had to write the captions. So that meant that they had to understand what the images were all about. And we just did the opening spread. Okay, now visually enhanced quotation is in this case, the students could choose any quotation they wanted, and typographically or in some other means they had to enhance the quotation. I mentioned how important it was that they get a good quotation. I said, if you get a good quotation, even if your design is not very good, the quotation, at least that will entertain the viewer. If you have a lousy quotation, I don't care how well you design it, there's no way that you're going to save it. So I think you'll find here, now the first ones at Cooper Union, the first ones I'll show you, are done by letterpress, because at Cooper Union we were very fortunate to have a metal type shop. So the first ones you see will all be done old technology, really old technology. It was an assignment in 30 years of teaching. I never had any student that did not enjoy the experience of setting metal type. It was actually okay. So again, and in the book there are some of these images, but I'll show you the metamorphoses. Shakespeare, Et tu, Brute. Now I realize some of these you may not be able to read, but you can see the designs. This is a quotation that talks about not a man but a cloud in trousers. So they simply took white chalk, enough to enhance the quotation. A very simple thing. I love this one by Burroughs. You know, Burroughs did 2001. Blood of Christ, rivers of blood, mountains of blood. Does Christ never get tired of bleeding? And they did it on a shroud. They printed it on a shroud, which seemed very appropriate. This is E.E. Cummings, One Leaf, Oneliness. I love it when students surprise teachers. First of all, this is metal type. They had to do a comprehensive to show me before they can go into the metal type shop. So this student came in with this strange-looking thing, and I had to remind her that this is metal type. And metal type, you can't do these things on metal type. So next week she came in with this. What she did, she printed it 4 times with different color paper and then cut it all apart and did a collage of it. So I mean, it's wonderful when by your students you will be taught. And again, this is the same idea: things you cannot do with metal type. Patterns. This again is a mask. These are actually holes. This is a quotation by Hawthorne about people sometimes being a mask, and so they made a mask out of the. And this guy was a pretty good artist, and he just did his own illustration. This is a quotation by Aristotle, Samuel Beckett. A quotation about pleats in a skirt, and just folded the paper to make pleats. And Shakespeare's from King Lear, Howl, Howl, Howl. Now, digitally enhanced, the project given by later students in the workshops. These are some of the solutions done digitally. This is a very lovely one. Common sense is not so common, by Voltaire. I love just the dot, just to finish off the justification. 3 can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead. It's by Albert Einstein. Dreams. This one stumped me. I did get it started. Never show something. It was unfinished work, and it was never show fools unfinished work. This one I don't have time to explain to you. It's from the Bible, and they jumbled up you know all the words, but the viewer has to put the sentences together. Neruda. This one I do have to explain to you, only because when I saw it at first, I realized graphically it's not very well designed. and I couldn't read it. And then so the designer, she said, well, I'll read it for you. And I think when you hear it, you probably realize that maybe it's an appropriate design. I know that you believe that you understand what you think I said, but I'm not sure you realize that what you heard is not what I meant. So it sounds like two lovers quarreling. So when you look at that confused sentence and you look at this confused design, I think it's appropriate. And it's a quote by Robert Frost. This again is a very simple thing. Everything is death while it lives. The dead trees by themselves would have spoken death, but the fact that the designer turned the trees upside down was a nice touch, one of those little extra things that you get. It is always impossible until it's done, Nelson Mandela. So again, this is enhanced quotation. Then you get something lighter, Mick Jagger's, lose your dreams, you might easily lose your mind. Morrissey. Someone mentioned yesterday, think outside the box. It's a risk to love. What if it doesn't work out? But what if it does? Don't think it, think it. There's safety in numbers. Very cute, very nice. This is a strange one. I don't know if it's ironic or they're sincere. This one should appeal to you. First they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. Mahatma Gandhi. Experimental typography. I do have to explain this one. At Yale Graduate School, we had a visiting instructor, Dieter Rowe, very famous. I think he passed away a few years ago. And I forget what the project was, but I remember when we brought in our designs, he took one look at them and he was not impressed. In fact, he took a newspaper, he took a razor blade, and he said, I can make better designs if I just take this razor blade, and he cut some squares out of the newspaper, threw them on the table, and said, any of these are more interesting than anything I see here. Well, I have to admit he was right. The designs graphically were very, very interesting. So years later, when I was teaching, I decided that I would turn it into a project. So I took this, I took some magazines, I would just throw it down on a magazine, and I would cut out whatever showed up. So I would get hundreds of these squares, just odds and ends like this. I would give them to the students, and I would say, pick any, it's okay, pick any two or three, and I want you to keep the integrity of the design, and I want you to turn that into something, give it meaning. It is fascinating what they came up with, and I'll show you some examples of it. And again, these are second-year students. That little scrap added panic with Photoshop, opened the mouth, did all kinds of things. And these are, if I had given them an assignment and said, okay, I want you to work with panic, you would never come up with something like that. They would come up with something, but I don't think it would be half as interesting. So when you think of the copy that they add and to enhance the design, it just taps into a certain part of the brain, which I think enhances their design skills. Plus, every project that I'm showing you now, the students enjoyed. They really enjoyed not only learning, but the results from the projects. Lighten up. This again was a very, very nice solution. And not just adding the X's, which mean kisses, but smudging it a little bit, like, you know, go to your desire, don't hang around here. I don't know if they make these up or if they got them from some book or a song or whatever it is, but again, it just enhances. First it was Titanic. Yeah. This was, again, students have sometimes an odd sense of humor. They took that little thing and they have this, anything can go wrong, and they have them cutting the leg. It's bizarre. Don't waste a minute not being happy. If one window closes, run to the next window. The next one is similar to that. If opportunity doesn't knock, build a door. Some of these we don't have time to read. This is a nice thought. No one looks back on their life and remembers the nights they had plenty of sleep. And again, this is from that little scrap with a gun. They got a dead bird at the bottom. There are so many fragile things, after all. People break easily, and so do dreams and hearts. I like the way they bent the type. Another nice one. Never grow up. It's a trap. Nobody can hide. This is sweet. In the end, we only regret the chances we didn't take. I don't know why the image is appropriate, but for some strange reason I find it very appropriate. Just what that woman in the middle of a field. What if? And this one I kept only because they turned that into like a Mondrian. The type is a little bit busy, but again, the extent. Look at the extent this student went to. They took this little scrap. They put the Queen of England, they put in Bugs Bunny, a sofa. I mean, they furnished the whole space, but they kept the integrity of the design. Less is more. And again, this is a very simple one. They took away all the background, left the woman with a cup of coffee, and just said, calm down, loosen up, relax. This is a song by Campbell, West Virginia. This, you can't quite see it. Never go to sleep angry. Stay awake and get revenge. There's a whole philosophy here. Feel free to experiment. I love this one. I don't know if you can read it. It's so nice to wake up in the morning when you're all alone and not have to tell someone you love them when you don't love them anymore. Everything passes. Don't attach. Lighten up. Oh, again, I'm glad they didn't give me the project, I'll tell you that. This again this is a ship. I think it's a Titanic, and they just simply added the Morse code: SOS, 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 save our ship. I think it's totally. I wouldn't change a dot. This one makes me laugh. They took this scrap. You have this diamond bracelet or something. She built a whole world of space, and it said, "Who the hell are you?" Now this one is a story. Nobody could solve this one. And finally, I think she came up with a solution. Thanks, Jim, for the great project. I give up. And I'd like to give this to a whole class, because I do want a solution to this. And even the teachers, and nobody could come up with a solution. And it's so graphic that it's personal poster. This came about at the Cooper Union when I would have the students. When I had the students do the semester's work, I had them put together everything onto a CD disc. And then when they did the CD disc, I said, I want you to do a cover for the CD disc. It was a mini portfolio. And I want you to put a cover on that, and I want it to express your personality. At Cooper Union, it had to say Typo 1. I want the name of the school. I want your signature. I want your name. I want the year and the school. And when I give it at workshops, instead of putting Typo 1, we put designing with type. So I'll show you something. What I love about this is that for me, people who have grandchildren, they love to have all these pictures of their grandchildren. But for me, these are students, not just names. These are students that I worked with, and they have meaning to me. So I have this wonderful collection of not only their faces, their names. So I'll go through, and again, it's supposed to express your personality, and it's wonderful how well they do that. This guy cloned himself. She just a reflection. It's very quiet, soft, elegant. This is very lovely. Just running through the hall there. When I show these, I said, which one do you remember? It's always her in the bathtub for some reason. Very nice, like Alice in Wonderland. Okay, and this project, which was to remind the students that everything doesn't have to come off the computer. You can do wonderful graphic effects just going back to old technologies. So for this one, I had to do a ransom note, just tearing up magazines and doing the whole thing graphic. And you get graphic effects that I don't think you can get off the computer. And some of them I could almost see, like, I'll show you one particular one, it could almost be a huge painting. Dear Grandma, make supper or kiss your dentures goodbye. But if you look at it graphically, it's beautiful. This is the one that I was saying that I think could be a huge painting. Okay, the reason I'm showing this is I mentioned because of time, you didn't have time to read all the text, and I just wanted to let you know that there are two websites. DesigningWithType.com is the original one, but 15 years old now. It has projects from all over the world. DesigningWithType.com/5 is a companion to the book, and if you go on that, you'll get many of these examples of this. And there's an ebook version of the Designing with Type. I prefer that students use the text type. There's something about talking about 12-point type and 10-point type on a laptop. It's not the same as seeing it printed, and it's just something. The print book is much better. I did not design the ebook. In fact, we're trying to negotiate with the publisher to do a better job on the ebook, but it is available. Now, I just wanted to have one last thing that in closing, let me say that we as graphic designers come a long way from the prehistoric twigs marking trails, and no one knows where all this may lead. But I do believe that wherever that may be, that you and other graphic designers will be a major part of this journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
We now request our esteemed director, Vinay Mundada sir, to kindly honor Mr. James Craig. Please.
Thank you, sir. The audience can now ask questions or any queries they have for sir. We have a 5-minute question answer round right now.
Sure. So after that wonderful exposition on graphic design, it reminds me to say that the equivalent of Professor Craig, in some sense no one, but in India, if we had Professor Joshi with us, then that would have been an equivalent in terms of the number of years spanned across teaching and working with the industry and so on. We are honored to have you, Professor Craig, and there's a load full of people waiting to ask you questions. One of the posters that you showed us which said, Elizabeth who, there is no fear of that in this room. Anyone saying James who. So you could direct the questions at Professor Craig. When you ask these questions, please ask them loud, and I will, if he's not able to hear them or understand them, then I'll re-quote them for him. So put up your hand and ask your question. First question, please. Okay, so Professor Craig is particularly interested in meeting with some of the teachers, faculty members, with whom he will spend time after the break. But nevertheless, you could direct your questions, because when you ask these questions, it's revelatory to the rest of the audience, and there's something to be learned from the questions too. But you do have an opportunity with him after the session as well. So please.
Good morning to everybody. I'm Day2 from NID. I want to ask, do you see any importance of learning letterpress for graphic designer in today's context, as you have mentioned some hands-on experience will enhance our understanding. What is your view on revival of letterpress?
Professor Craig, he's, from what I understand, and to correct me, he wishes to know the role played by letterpress in today's context, and I suppose he means the changed context of the digital medium. Roughly that? What do you mean by the significance of letterpress in today's context? He'd like you to interpret that.
Yeah, actually in NID we are taking an initiative as we have infrastructure. So we are going to give a space to people to work in letterpress, and so I want to know from him that what kind of thing we can incorporate in that space, so that we can enhance our understanding as a graphic designer, and to learn typography and whatever.
So how can a graphic designer in today's world use the letterpress effectively? The old technology, the letterpress, yes.
I think the value of the letterpress, if you're talking about just the experience, I think it's part of our cultural heritage, and just the idea of working with metal typesetting type and printing editions of the type it's one of those unique experiences. I don't think it's transferable. There are little shops in New York City that do things in letterpress, do little invitations and things like that. But that's a kind of a specialty shop. But I think that there's not a graphic design student in the world that would love the experience of actually working in a shop and doing one little project like a quotation or something like that. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's the value of it. And as I said before, I never had a student that did not enjoy the experience.
Thank you, Professor Craig. Can we have the next question, please?
It's not question but appreciation. I'm a student of James and a Facebook friend. The journey, he's not rigid. If you notice, he starts from technical and went to visualizing. The Swiss way of teaching is more technical, your way or more thinking, text, messages, and fuse images and personalized style together, which I appreciate very much.
I was talking earlier about, is this working? Oh, I was talking earlier about cultural differences. And for example, if you go to a school in Germany or you go to a school in Japan, they are very, very technical and it's possible that you'll do an awful lot of reading. You could spend your first 2 semesters just studying maybe one typeface and things like that. In the United States, we're very what's called pragmatic. We like to design and not to read too much about graphic design. We signed up to be graphic designers. We don't want to read about it. We want to do it, so that we are more apt to learn by doing rather than studying books and things like that. If you wanted to read about graphic design, you'd probably be an English major in college. And I just find that, and I use myself as an example because I was a very poor reader. And the reason that I think designing with type after 45 years is so successful is when I was writing it, I wanted to make absolutely sure there's no big words in it, that everybody can understand it. And Winston Churchill, not maybe a hero here, but Winston Churchill once said that anybody that uses a big word when a small word will do is an ass. So I didn't want to be an ass. And I think that I know that some professors, when I wrote Designing with Type, they were surprised because I have a master's degree, and they were kind of like, it's so basic. I didn't care what the professors thought. The students loved the book, and they learned from it, and that was what is important. But I did want to say that there are people here who are teachers, and we want to have a discussion, and I think the best time would be to meet during the break and decide on how much we want to cover. And anybody is welcome to come there, because I know, like myself, people usually don't want to ask questions in an audience, but the minute the light comes down, everybody comes up front to ask questions. So I think we'll be around during the break, and I'd love to talk to all of you, and any kind of question, I'll be happy to answer it.
So Professor Craig, let's, in that case, if no one has a question, and yes, you do? Okay, so last but one question, because I have an observation to make at the end. He wants you to ask it in Hindi, and I'll translate it
for you. I call myself as a typography enthusiast. I just wanted to know, in the presentation, you showed a slide where students had made a collage of sentences and made a layout of it. So I wanted to know what was the creative obstacle made in that assignment. Were they finding out those sentences, or was there any brainstorming done to get to that sentence?
So I think what she's asking here is that in the collages created out of quotations,
yes,
the ransom notes, was the design constraint set by you for the students in terms of whether the student himself had to figure out the lines in the quote and the semantics and the meaning, or was the hurdle meant for the audience? Is
Correct.
that what you're
Yes.
asking?
No, the project was totally up to the students. They had to come up with whatever the idea was, like grandma, if you don't get your dentures back, And some of these are meant to be funny, but the idea, what I wanted them to do, it's almost fine art when you get into that. If you look at it was just all of the projects in the book. There are 12 projects, and each one is meant to develop your graphic design skills. But most of them, when you go on the website and you see all of these projects, they give you all the instructions, you have all the information. You don't even have to buy the book. But you will find that the projects run a wide range, and they all do something to develop your design skills. I think, and the book is a course in the fundamentals, and they're second-year students, which is quite remarkable. And the other thing I wanted to mention earlier, which I forgot, not only when I go to the schools around the world, Slovenia. When I was in Slovenia, I was planning a talk, and I said, "How long would you like me to talk?" And they said, 1 hour. I said, "Okay, I'll plan something for half an hour because you need an interpreter." And they said, "Oh no, everybody speaks English." Okay, this is Slovenia. Yeah? I was a little bit suspicious because they're speaking English and understanding English and all that. I was amazed that no matter where I go, Athens, Slovenia, as you see, the students are fluent. They joke in English, they speak, and it doesn't surprise me here. English is a second language here anyway, but it's amazing. Not only is the graphic design becoming predominantly female, but also the fact is that as English has taken over the world, that. And when I was in Prague, they said if you talk to anybody under 40, you speak English. Over 40, you speak Russian. So it's interesting as you travel, you pick up these cultural differences. So, but getting back to the collage, it's just the idea of there's many, many ways of creating graphic effects. I build on that project, I build on that, and I say now, you've done that, I want you to take one part of that and turn that into a book jacket or something like that. So they take that one element which gets your attention, and you've got a whole book jacket. The thing is, I tell students, sometimes throw away your computer, your laptop, sit down with a piece of paper and pencil, and do some just little sketches. You can do it much faster than on the computer. So it's just amazing. Anybody that's taught for 10, 20, 30 years, it's amazing when you look back at your first class, you think you taught well, but how much more ground you can cover year by year by year. It's amazing in one semester how much information the students get. And so, as I said, I'm quite happy to share any knowledge that I have and anything in the book if you want to. I'd love to see if you do any of these projects. I would love to see the results for them, because you have the website, and I'm going to set up. I'm in the process of setting up on the website a workshop so that I can show you what I showed you here. So every school will have a page or a few pages, and you can see all the students' work with their name on it. So that's another thought.
So just to add, on Typo Day this year, we had a workshop called No Waste, which gave a similar result. So he can probably view the results, because even that workshop was on the lines of collage with lettering.
So she would like to, right. So she'd like to share, maybe you can share this with him at some
later
point.
on, yeah, sure.
She'd like to show you the outcome of a workshop that used collage as a graphic design medium.
Yeah, it was not conducted by me, but my professor. At Typo Day here only.
It was done the day before the conference commenced, part of the workshops, and the theme was no waste. So she'd like to share that with you.
I will be giving 2 workshops here this week for SID and MIT, and they'll be doing 3 of those projects. And that'll be the quotation, the personal poster, and the experimental typography. So and that's takes about a week, So I'll add that to my collection.
And we shall not let Professor Craig leave India after that, right? So he can do many more workshops. Yeah, that's a good idea. So at the break, do come here and have your questions addressed. Mahendra Bhai, there's a question here. So
You're talking about workshops. Just to add. Hello, he's talking about 2 workshops. At SID, workshop is going to be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and it is not only for SID students. If any other students want to attend it, we are going to have second class, 2 studios, one open to other students. We started with SID, but we got requests from other institutions in Pune to hold the same workshop. We are open to. So, Thursday, Friday, Saturday at SID, there will be 2 studios, one for SID students, another for other students. Both would have individual professor assisting him to make it most meaningful. Can I take one more thing? When? Yeah.
Then it interferes with the tenor of the discussion. But I will pass on to you. A question here from one master to another, Sudarshan.
I'm not the master, please. I have no question, but I have little suggestions to our NID participant. See, you had asked about letterpress. It is nothing to do with letterpress or silk screen or any medium. It is your own sensitivity which has to work. It can work just like someone talked about collage. It is that inner self which has to be provoked to find out something out of nothing. So that is more important than any media. And one should not even depend on computer or on silk screen or anything. I have seen number of good Japanese posters printed with silk screen while the digital media is there available. So there is no you can say binding or even a limit to our real feeling and coming something where there is nothing. So that is the challenge actually every one of us has to have it. Thank you.
So, Mr. Dheer was speaking in for Professor Craig and communicating the idea that there's no, designing is not about depending on a medium. The mediums come and go, but it's what you want to express at the end. So on that, is there another question in the audience? Otherwise, we'll wind up. Okay. So I'd like to wind up this session with a slight question and slight observation for Professor Craig, and by serendipity, the point brought in by Mr. Dheer. If Professor Craig, you started your lecture with early man and in the pre-Phoenician age, and for us in India, it goes even way beyond the pre-Phoenician days when the Homo sapiens just emerged almost between 130,000 to 75,000 years ago. A lot of tools that were carved out at that time, including the stone tool that was in Africa, and then the subsequent tools in India and Indonesia, etc. Today, scientists in labs figure that the affordances built into those tools haven't basically changed, and they were learned from birds and monkeys and so on. And they've given the iPad to monkeys to work as a result of that finding, and they realized that gorillas and monkeys can work with the iPad just as well as humans. So my question is that in this swathe of time that you've covered between then and the digital age in which we sit, where you pleading with everyone that you please do come out of the computing medium and try out things, because, and you've given examples of those. If we took up a scenario where one of those science fiction scenarios that American Hollywood films love showing, where the world comes to an end because of some ridiculous whatever, like a Holocaust, and God forgive not, but let's say there's a blank slate and we go back to the pre-Phoenician. And the pre-Phoenician man and those cave paintings that you mentioned, they were basically messaging for people ahead. And one of the messages that was there, the horse, was actually an ice age horse that had turned into a dog-sized horse, which they've found out now happened because of the ice age. And thank goodness for the cave painting. Now, if that Holocaust or the wiping had to happen, how would you suggest they do graphic design? Apart from the bridal paths that they carved out.
Make the question a little simple.
That's the challenge, Professor Craig.
I have a 2-hour answer, I think, and I don't think we have time.
We are not letting Professor Craig out of the country, so you've got all your time to figure out, and we can clear up the question later. But there is...
No, but what did interest me is I was just given basically the history of our alphabet with the Phoenician things. The other thing in terms of, you mentioned the cave art, what always struck me is with the sophistication of the paintings of the animals. As a single line, it's got volume. And if I tried to draw that same thing, it would look like a two-dimensional animal. And these are people, I mean, maybe it answers your question in a way. If you got rid of everything, there's always some genius is going to come up, and they will recreate, they'll create something that is art. It's beautiful. Nobody considered that when the person working in the cave. Well, one thing, there's a lot of this is getting off the subject just a little bit, but there's a lot of emphasis on the political correctness, and I can get in trouble sometimes, because when I was in school there were boys and girls, and then in males and females. Now it's young ladies and young men, and you have to be very careful, And I was realizing when I mentioned the twig, and some anonymous hunter came along and saw that, and then I realized, well, maybe I should say, it might have been a woman who was out getting berries, and she was out there getting berries, and she made the trail. I just want to let you know that it could have been a woman, so I'm not sure, but maybe we'll find out one day.
Thank goodness we've not yet arrived there because we're too busy rampaging our parliamentary floors to be politically correct because we're so politically savage. But I did get my answer, and the answer lies in what you said, that it's not in the medium that you create sophistication of work, it's in the man's hands, in the way he did, and he did that way back then.
I don't know about you. Maybe it's like, you have parents and they show you pictures of their children. Aren't they beautiful? And it's like, well, yeah, it looks like 1,000 other children. So maybe it's me, but when I look at some of the students' work, the quotations or their images and how they see themselves, I'm very moved by it. I think it's quite beautiful for second-year students. And like I was joking, but like when I cut these things out of the paper. Now, I had to be very careful. First of all, I would have the students cut them out. And then I found out what they did. They designed something. They went to the magazines and they got something which was almost like a nice-looking picture. And that didn't work. And then I started cutting them out, and I found myself doing something similar, almost like, oh, that looks like an interesting thing, and that didn't work. And I don't understand why, but the only way it works is you take that template and you close your eyes and you throw it down and you cut through maybe 10 pages. That works. I don't know why it works, but you cannot plan it. It's just one of those strange. But these are things that over 30 years of teaching. That's why if somebody wanted to give that project, this is what I would warn you to do. I just say like what I'm telling you now. So each of these projects, there's certain little things that I would suggest to get better results. But when I look at, now, by the way, I should say one other thing. I'm not only talking about second-year students. The schools that I visited, they were not the major university schools. These were schools which were like, there's the top schools with the right names and the right teachers and the big budgets. Then there's the schools where you shouldn't really go to because they just want your money. But this is the second tier, the second level of students. So the fact that level student can turn out work like that, believe me, I was impressed. I expect the same thing here.
On that luminous note, and with a little promise to Professor Craig that one day symbiosis will rise to the point where they say Professor Craig was here. We end this session only temporarily because he will hold a question-answer session with you. I pass on the mic to volunteer. Sure.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. We are very pleased to announce that Font Lab is organizing a workshop in Symbiosis Institute of Design on the 3rd, 4th and 5th of March, which is Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday respectively. Everybody who is interested are please requested to go to the registration desk and register themselves as soon as they can. Now we move towards our 7th session. Professor Mahendra Patel is currently a mentor in the Symbiosis Institute of Design, Pune, India. He was honored with the Gutenberg Award for 2010 by the International Gutenberg Society, Mainz, Frankfurt, Germany. Mr. Mahendra Patel would be presiding over our 7th session. We request sir to please step up, take the chairperson's desk and start the session.
Hi friends, without killing time, I immediately would request Mr. Gunnar from Monotype to start its presentation, and I'll take my time after all of them talked to summarize it. Yeah, time is running out, so I would rather to make economic presentation.
Our first paper for today is titled The Rukha Style and Its Role in Arabic Typography. It will be presented by Gunnar Williamson. He is a senior type designer from Monotype, UK. So, we request you to please take up the stage and start the presentation.
Sorry, I have to use a keynote because I don't know everything by heart that I'm going to say today. Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Mahendra Patel. I'm Gunnar. I'm from Monotype in London, and today I'm going to talk about Ruhka. Ruhka is one of the many styles you can use to write the Arabic script. And I'm going to start again. Next time I'll come prepared. Okay. Yeah, like I said, Ruhka is one of the many styles you can use to write the Arabic script. It's a fairly new invention. It was formulated in the Ottoman Empire, the government offices of the Ottoman Empire in Istanbul, the so-called Babu Ali, in the mid-19th century. And up until that time, mainly 4 styles were used in these offices, and they were Talik, the Ottoman version of Nastalik, that you know here as Urdu, and that was mostly used for writing legal documents. Siyakat, a style resembling a cipher that was used for writing fiscal documents, and the Divani and Jali Divani styles. And they were used exclusively by the Ottoman Royal Chancery and made purposely complicated to ensure confidentiality of court documents and to protect them from forgery. So, in an effort to escape the complexity of this 4-style system, the Babu Ali scribes rationalized Talik and Divani and created Ruhka, a simplified handwriting style that was fast and easy in practice. And this is an example of the first version of Ruhka, which was formalized by a great Babu Ali calligrapher named Mumtaz Effendi. Nevertheless, it was a man called Mehmet Izzet Effendi who canonized the Ruhka style, and his hand superseded Mumtaz Effendi's and became the version of Ruhka commonly used afterwards. It is referred to as Izzet Effendi Ruhka. Ruhka has a large number of distinctive features. In the following breakdown, I'll try to point out a few of the peculiarities and explain it briefly. Like I mentioned earlier, Ruhka is a descendant of the Talik and Divani styles. And this background is evident when you compare these styles, and you can see quite a few elements from these parent styles are still apparent in Ruhka. The most obvious feature of all 3 is the diagonal word structure, the hanging that both Divani and Ruhka get from the Talik style. But the name Talik literally means hanging or suspending. Divani has the most extreme sloping of them, while Ruhka has a more moderate angle. However, in Ruhka, the angle of word sloping varies greatly depending on letter combinations, and can go from being nearly horizontal to fully vertical. The most important observation in this comparison is the simplification or rationalization of Ruhka. You can see how generous the Talik style is with its stroke elongation, and some letters take up a lot of space. Divani has inherited that feature, but with a more vertical elongation, more expressive and flourished strokes, taking up considerable vertical space. Ruhka, on the other hand, is highly pragmatic and is stripped of all needless elongation, decorations, or any lifting of the pen. It was made to be a simple, fast, efficient handwriting style, and you can see, in comparison with its parent styles, how both the horizontal and vertical strokes have been reduced to the minimum length needed to represent individual letter forms. Another nice feature of Ruhka is how the dots have been simplified. Like you see in the top left corner, So instead of writing 3 dots, you do an arrow-like shape, and 2 dots become a short horizontal stroke. In letters kaf, nun, kaf, and shin, the dots are merged into the shapes. And in the shin shapes at the bottom of the slide, the so-called teeth have been removed and replaced with an uninterrupted stroke. And just to briefly touch up on the effects of this simplification, I'll do a little math, a very rough math. So let's say with these shorter strokes and the reduced lifting of the pen, the scribes saved an average of 2 seconds for every word, and that means in a 500-word document they could save about 16 minutes. And I think that's quite impressive considering how big the bureaucracy was in the Ottoman Empire at that time. And these are the contextual factors of Rukka. It has a number of contextual shapes, and contextual shapes are letters that change shape depending on the next letter in a word. For example, initial B shape can take on 4 different forms depending on the following letter. And this contextual interdependence also affects the stacking and the level of the letter in relation to the notional baseline. Some letters connect with descending strokes, while others use more like a horizontal stroke that can be joined to the following letter at various levels. And as an example, I have the name Ibrahim. And before writing it, you must consider that Aleph, which is the first letter, must touch the line. Ra, which is the 3rd letter, must touch the line. Therefore, Be, which is the 2nd letter preceding the Ra, must be started fairly high. And Mim, which is the last letter of the word, is a descending letter, and therefore the Ha must be pretty high as well. So this is how the preceding letters affect the stacking of the following letters affect the preceding letters when it comes to placements. There is a fantastic book by an author called T.F. Mitchell about the Rukka style, and in the end of his book he provides a detailed list of contextual shapes in Rukka. And these are tables with 2 and 3 letter combinations, and you can get an insight into kind of the extensive variations possible. And in this table you can see in what way the preceding and following letter forms join and affect the shape of the letter Ha. Around the time Rukka was formulated, there was a push to reform schools throughout the Ottoman Empire. And at that time, the Ottoman Empire was a group of provinces extending from North Africa and the Arab states up into the Balkans. State-financed schools of all levels were established, from elementary, lower secondary, upper secondary to professional level. And these girls on the left photo are locals in Istanbul, and they studied at a public school in Istanbul. And the boys on the right are a part of the so-called tribal school that brought the sons of tribal notables from throughout the empire to study in Istanbul. So the public schooling reached every corner of the Ottoman territories. And as might be expected, a big part of the education was writing, and the students were taught to write the Arabic script in Rukka style. So at the top is the first exercise, writing the dots and Aleph, which is the first letter of the Arabic script. The exercises gradually become more complex in manual number 3. Students get an introduction to proportions with the rhombic dot system. And now they have to write words. Eventually, in the 7th manual, they learn to write whole sentences and have become familiar with the stacking of words and the contextual factors of Rukka. So, through this universal education, in addition to wide distribution through the Ottoman bureaucracy, Rukka became an integral part of everyday life for common people in the empire. And today, the most exhaustive use of Rukka is in handwriting and lettering. And this is evident on the streets of cities in countries formerly under Ottoman rule. And even though there are stylistic variations, it is fascinating to see how well the Izzet Effendi Rukka model I showed you before has been preserved. So, to give you a little insight into the daily life of Rukka, I'll travel to these countries for a brief moment. And here you can see a Rukka on a cinema poster on the far left, on a cinema facade in Cairo, a stationery shop in Amman, a headline in Khartoum, graffiti in Giza, film titles, pharmacy in Cairo, a cola sign in Beirut, salon in Alexandria, a protest banner in Benghazi, a road sign in Jerusalem, electric maintenance in Beirut, an Ottoman headstone in Istanbul, stencils in Cairo, and this is my favorite, Egyptian film posters, sign painters workshop in Alexandria, headline in Beirut, trash bin in Alexandria, and finally a dentist sign in Cairo. So this gives you a little taste of how deeply rooted in the visual landscape of these cultures Rukka really is, and concludes my short introduction to what defines the style and how it's used in writing and lettering. And next up is typography. It was an Armenian printer named Ohannes Mohantisoglu who cut what is most likely the first typeface in Rukka. And in this letter here, I found in the Ottoman archives in Istanbul, there is correspondence from 1872 regarding the Empire's Ministry of Education commissioning Mohantisoglu to cut Rukka and Talik typefaces. And if you're already getting familiar with the style, you will see that it's written in Rukka. So here at the top, in a book printed in Istanbul in 1888, is the first example I have of the typeface made by Mohantisoglu. And it seems he's using Izzet Effendi's Rukka as a model for his design. It's a strong design and features some of Rukka's peculiarities, like contextual shapes and some cascading, but due to the limitations of cold metal typesetting and the complexity of Rukka's non-horizontal nature, the spacing and kerning is pretty poor. Soon after Mohantisoglu made the typeface at the turn of the 20th century, these factors, an increase in literacy thanks to the state public schools, freedom to publish and easier access to printing technology contributed to a publishing explosion in the empire. So suddenly there was a flood of new books, newspapers and other publications available, and interestingly, Rukka type can be found in numerous publications, playing various kinds of roles as a part of a typographic system, like you can see on the screen. And in the books I've browsed through so far, I found at least 4 different designs in small sizes of Rukka and 1 display size, and these typefaces are likely not all Mohantisoglu's. Okay, this is the role that I find most interesting and important, Rukka as a bold companion to a Naskh. And Naskh is another style of writing the Arabic script, it's the book script. And here Rukka is used as a secondary typeface for emphasis. And both of these writing styles were normally penned in small sizes in calligraphy. But interestingly, in calligraphy, those two would have never been used as companions. That means using them together was a new idea, and the printers were inventing a new system of hierarchy and emphasis for Arabic typography. And Rukka played crucial roles in that system. This method for emphasis is likely adapted from Latin typography, where, for example, in 18th century, fracture types were used as bolt companions to Antica types. And later in the 19th century, Clarendons served this role as companions to Roman type. These books we've seen here are all from the are all from the late 19th century and early 20th century, and they are evidence of the multiple application of Rukka and its popularity as a supporting or secondary typeface. These gentlemen here are printing the newspaper Shaul in an Ottoman state printing press in Beersheba in Palestine in 1917 during World War I. And after the fall of the Ottoman Empire in 1922, printing presses like this one were likely taken over by new governments of the formerly occupied territories, who kept on printing with Arabic typefaces. And at this point, mechanical typesetting was also picking up fast in these countries, and with that new technology came new concepts in Arabic typography. This attempt here to make a Rukka typeface for hot metal typesetting is the earliest I have found. It was based on ideas that the Moroccan professor Ghazal Lakhdar submitted to a significant Arabic script reform program at the Academy of the Arabic Language in Cairo. As a reaction to the submission being rejected, the Moroccan government teamed up with Monotype to realize the project. Lakhdar's idea was to design a typeface that allowed the setting and dissemination of Arabic texts, taking into account the use of all modern techniques, printing and typing, informatics, data transmission, and telecommunications. And this was in 1959, so to adapt to the limitations of these technologies, the design had to be extremely simplified. And these are the results. At the bottom you can see the full character set, which is impressively small for an Arabic typeface. And the reason is that, with few exceptions, the same shapes are supposed to work in initial, medial, isolated, and final forms, with attachments to the final forms in some cases, like a tail for the meme and ein and jim shapes. It runs on a fully horizontal baseline, and even though the shapes are in the spirit of Rukka, there is not much left of the style's peculiarities. Monotype was convinced by their client that this simplified form of Arabic would be universally adopted in Morocco, but in the end they sold only the original set of these 18-point matrices. And the printing office of the Ministry of National Education in Rabat, Morocco, took over the ownership of these faces in 1970. And that marked the end of Monotype's involvement in the project. 15 years later, in 1985, there was a whole issue of Typografische Monatsblätter dedicated to the project, summarizing its history and development. And there, the author explains how 5 teachers working for the Ministry of Education were trained to become type designers, so they could continue the development of the project. What I find interesting in this spread here is that the one-weight Rukka we saw before, that was designed in collaboration with the Monotype, has been expanded to a 3-weight typeface family. This is interesting in 2 ways. First, it is the earliest Rukka typeface family, and second, this demonstrates a new typographic system, the typeface family, designing uniform multiple weights of your Roman that can be used as companions for emphasis or typographic hierarchy. And this idea was adopted very early to Naskh Arabic typefaces designed for hot metal printing, and soon became the industry standard. In the early 80s, Linotype started to work on a Rukka, tailored for the Seertronic photo typesetting machines. The flexibility of photo typesetting opened up new possibilities, and in designed for the Arabic script. It could provide contextual interaction between letters. This one was designed by Tim Holloway and is an interesting take on the conventional Izzet Effendi model, even though it has a distinctive flavor with very exaggerated diagonal cuts in the shape. But it's lacking all the multi-level and cascading features of the style. One significant simplification made to avoid the cascading is that the conventional meteor forms of Jim and Meme have been replaced by their initial form. And this typeface was released for the Seatronic, and you can see it included here in a catalog of Farsi typefaces from Linotype. And according to Fiona Ross, who was overseeing the project, this design was never widely distributed because of its limitations in presenting the peculiarities of Ruka. So it was not accepted by their clients and was taken out of circulation. And as a result of these limitations, Linotype started working on technology to solve the challenges of presenting Ruka. And the results of that work was introduced late 1988, and it was a technology tailored around a Nastaliq typeface called Shiraz and later Kalmi that could handle stacking of letters, contextual shapes, overlap, and interaction between words and vocal marks. But unfortunately, Linotype never revised their earlier Ruka, this one, for this new revolutionary system. FF Amman is a recent typeface family by Yanon. It was designed as a part of rebranding of Amman, the capital of Jordan. It's a Latin and Arabic typeface family with multiple weights. It has an Arabic Naskh style companion to the Latin regular and a Ruka companion to a cursive italic. And this is a fresh new typographic role for Ruka, Ruka serving as a cursive italic companion to Naskh. It is interesting to compare this idea with what I showed you before, the use of Ruka around the turn of the 20th century as a secondary typeface for emphasis in body text. But this is the first and only time I've seen it used as an italic, and the idea is pretty nice. FF Amman has a monoline Ruka hybrid and a more calligraphic version, both including multiple weights. The design is greatly simplified in the spirit of early Arabic hot metal typefaces and has the characteristics of a personal handwriting, which it gives it a distinctive overall pattern as well as a hybrid appearance. And in spite of the absence of Ruka peculiarities, FF Amman is a fresh look at the role of the style. And it is most definitely the largest typeface family ever made in the Ruka style. Wasim is one of the new typefaces included in Apple's Maverick operating system, and it's a Ruka. And I think Ruka has never been included in their operating systems before. It was designed by Divan Software, who have been providing Arabic font solutions to Apple for a period of time now. And Wasim has two weights, regular and light, and has a very soft, personal, fastpen kind of flavor. It is based on the traditional Izzet Effendi model, and using Apple's AAT technology, they managed to present the peculiarities of the style pretty impressively, actually. But the downside is that AAT font features don't work in Adobe products, because Adobe uses OpenType. So to do this sample string here, I had to use TextEdit. Apart from that, it's a very good design, and Wasim literally means handsome, so it fits the style. Dacotype are Thomas Milo, Miriam Sommers, and her brother Peter Sommers. In 1983, they came up with a solution to successfully present Ruka. And they did this on a daisy wheel printer with a limited character set or slots. And how they did it? They did it by breaking down letter shapes into 70 coarse strokes. And these strokes could be used to print or puzzle together any letter of the Arabic script in the Ruka style. And this concept has been the drive in all of their solutions since. And in '87, they introduced a new software, the Arabic calligraphic printer, a new technology they had tailored around the complexities of typesetting Ruka. And they were using this concept. The drawing here is from an early phase of this project, showing 10 of the 70 coarse strokes. And here they were preparing it for digitization. The Arabic calligraphic printer was built into a Microsoft OLE server and integrated into Microsoft Word. And up here is the result of this work. What Dacotype managed to do here was to present Ruka satisfactorily for the first time in a typeface. And the design follows Izzet Effendi's Ruka very strictly and sufficiently captures the style. This Arabic calligraphic printer later evolved into the Arabic calligraphic engine, which they used to make fonts for the InDesign plugin Tasmim. And this is Dacotype's latest Ruka from 2011, and it is the most technologically advanced so far because it is the only one available that exhaustively represents the style. And this example here shows 8 possible ways of justifying words with shape alternates.
Sorry, good answer.
Yeah.
Would you mind to conclude in 5 minutes?
Yeah, I have 1 minute left.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that. So on the left we see the ACE engine at work in the word Ibrahim, using 14 coarse strokes to assemble the word. And on the right there are 14 different ways to write the word Muslim with contextual shape variations. So it's a fantastic typeface, but the downside is that the ACE engine is not a standardized technology, so this Ruka is only available through the Tasmin plugin. And another downside is that it's not easy for anyone outside Dacotype to design fonts for this technology. So to wrap this up, I have an overview of the typefaces you have seen, and it may seem ironic how this simple and efficient handwriting style turned out to be one of the most complicated styles to adapt to print and font technology. And the golden years of Ruka in typography were at the turn of the 20th century, where it played multiple roles. However, since then, it has kind of lost its role to new ideas in Arabic typography, and also owing to the fact that, like this overview reveals, Ruka typefaces have been living in an unfulfilling relationship with technology for over a century now. So even though there was a demand, there was no way to supply a proper Ruka typeface. But it feels nicer to be optimistic and say that in the not so distant future we will have standardized a technology that can properly handle the non-horizontal Arabic styles and hopefully just all the scripts on the planet. But then a new important question comes up. Will Ruka have a role in Arabic typography? Will it still have a role in Arabic typography? And if so, what will it be? And that concludes my talk. Thank you.
Any big questions?
Anything you want to know about Ruka?
Yeah. Because this is such a scary thing, we should conclude now and then we won't remember.
Yeah?
Hello. Gunnar, one thing I observed,
Yeah?
that one font which you have, the Vani, that seems to be more compact, and then you have, although you must have had done from classic font to modified font, you have done it. But when we see in the newspaper, we find it very, very loose, spacey, and it's not compact. Is this intentional? That is one question. The other is, these days, in some graphic design magazines from Iran, you notice there is a new trend of extending the horizontal line with a thick stroke.
Yeah. Okay.
What is it called, and how does it work? And that's a very display type of font.
Okay.
So these two questions are there. Can you please clarify this?
So the first question was about Divani, right?
Yeah.
And then you referred to the newspaper that I showed. Or?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So in the newspapers I was showing, Ruka was used as a headline face, but it was always handwritten.
Right.
So they printed the body text with NASC, like a simplified NASC typefaces, and then all the headlines were handwritten. So,
of course, yeah. I appreciate that.
And
the headline.
The Divani I showed before, I only showed Divani once in the comparison of the three styles. And the Divani I showed there was penned by Mehmet Izzet Effendi, the same guy as canonized Ruka. And with the question of the magazines in Iran, I'm not kind of sure how to answer that, but I think you mean the elongation of the strokes under the words, right? So, I mean, you will have to have a special software to kind of, if it's a Nastaliq, you will have to have a special software to make that work.
The contextual setting would help into it?
What?
The diagonal contextual setting, what we are talking about, would help?
So it has to do with contextual placement and
yes, Thomas?
Positioning.
You think it's just an extension of graphic designers thing, or what is it called?
That's definitely influenced by calligraphy, yeah.
Calligraphy?
I think so, yeah, if they're extending the strokes, yeah.
Because that is used very, very extensively. Okay. Even in the signboards, etc.
Exactly.
Or even sometimes we even see such kind of things extended to even Taj Mahal, where ayats are written in that style.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's very common for the more graceful calligraphic styles. But Ruka is kind of how do you say, the least.
Is it a modification? Is it a modification of the classic?
Yeah, it is a simplification of these styles, and it was never meant to be a calligraphic styles in a sense. That's why they cut out all the elongation out of it. It's supposed to be just like a fast and efficient handwriting style.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Would you like to add into it?
I just had one other question for Gunnar. You mentioned that you had hope that there would be a standardization on a way of handling the advanced typography needed for Ruka.
Yeah.
How do you see that happening? Do you think that people will develop ways to do that within OpenType, or will either the Decotype or something else need to be adopted?
I don't know. Decotype has the solution already, so it would be fantastic if we could see a merge of the Decotype technology into OpenType 2.0 or something. I have no idea, but I think it's kind of strange that we don't have technology at this point to solve all these problems. And maybe OpenType will never handle it in the state that it's in right now. And we kind of keep on trying to push the boundaries, but we never get to the right point. So I think the best way would just to be if these Decotype technology and OpenType would merge. Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah, let's keep the session as concise as possible. We are really running out of time.
Okay.
And I cannot resist the simple question which you can just answer in yes and no. Is in 1970 5 teachers were trained and something special happened, that what you said, a new typographic convention happened, we would like to know the names of those 5. You know them?
I have no idea about the
Good.
names now.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
And keep the session concise, please.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Gunnar.
Okay.
I'm sure we enjoyed it. Even we understood 10% of it. I think the gist was how across technology we have come back to hand. Yeah. So earlier technology was restricted to simplify and rationalize, and towards the end with contextual setting and other features, we are coming back to near hand or near classic practice. All of our scripts are also to some extent like Malayalam, what yesterday was talked about. There is old Malayalam and new Malayalam. There is time to go back to the writing habits of earlier configurations. Thank you. Gunnar.
Thank you so much, sir. We request everybody to please put their mobiles and cell phones on the silent mode so that the speakers aren't disturbed. Now we request Mr. Jayagovindan Menon, who is Head Communication Design, DJ Academy of Design, Coimbatore, India, to please start the second presentation, which is titled Typography, a Punctuated Interpretation.
Mr. Menon, if you don't mind, can I request you to make it concise, because there are lots of pressure behind me to conclude in time.
Thank you. I think it will be on time. So I practice, I think it will be on time. Thank you. Up and down. There is a pointer for you. Thank you. Good morning. I'm going to talk about punctuation, spacing, typographic articulation as a means to convey hierarchy and meaning, and its influence on Malayalam typography in particular. Small graphic marks that we call punctuations are often too crucial in written communications. We quite often underestimate them. Linguists claim that punctuations can actually save lives. Punctuation marks are of a much later origin compared to the origin of phonetic alphabet. Until the invention of printing, punctuations were used differently by different regions. And by different scribes as they wrote books. One of the earliest known system introduced around 260 BC. I'm sorry, this is just by automatically is going up and down.
Can somebody help me to make it manual?
It's okay. Yeah, thank you. So one of the earliest known system introduced around 260 BC used a centered dot, which was called comma at that time, for the shortest segment in a sentence, a lower dot called colon for a longer section, then a raised dot called period for the longer section. So punctuations again originally were used as breathing cues rather than to clarify sentence structure or meaning. So you can see in this exhibit that merely dots as punctuation mark work because those time Latin was written only in capital letters. The invention of printing revolutionized the way we write with grammatical structure and use of punctuation to aid clarity in meaning. The advent of printing set standards in the art of typography and introduced punctuation marks as refined non-phonetic graphic marks. They are non-phonetic, unlike the phonetic alphabet, because there is no corresponding spoken sign attached to it. Apart from these graphic signs, typography and book design also introduce what may be called visual punctuation by means of disposition of space and its relationship to form, size, and styles of typefaces to articulate structure and meaning. So the exhibit here shows effective use of space and variation in type to articulate hierarchy. So the same text put up in different ways to emphasize different parts, maybe to suit a particular context. So visual punctuation is all about the relationship among graphic elements and meaningful spaces in a composition. So it's a question of activating the space using the various elements on a page. This paper attempts to examine how Western influence contributed to the introduction of punctuations and visual punctuation in Indian languages in print, with special reference to Malayalam. Languages of the West, particularly the English, have had and continue to have considerable influence on Indian languages. Introduction of printing, English education, and availability of printed books from the West all have influenced Indian languages in many ways. Just to show the Malayalam script, it was originated based on Grantha, and it's a syllabic writing system, each unit representing a whole syllable, unlike the Latin, where the letter represents a phoneme. Malayalam script has 52 letters, including 16 vowels and 36 consonants, together making up 576 syllabic characters. The earlier style of writing Malayalam was modernized as of 1981. This new script considerably reduced the number of letters. This was done to bring Malayalam on the keyboards of typewriters and computers. Later, the design of Malayalam typefaces followed this style. Now, as we heard yesterday, there is revival of interest in going back to the older forms and hybrids. I must point out at this juncture that the new script actually takes up a lot more space than the old script, so maybe a book which could be done in about 100 pages using the old script might take about 130 pages by using the new script. So if we are looking at educational books which are printed in lakhs and lakhs of copies, this can have an impact on the amount of paper that we use. Malayalam, like most other Indian languages and languages in general, did not have any punctuation marks to begin with. Peculiarities of the original sentence construction did not require punctuation. The most widely used punctuations are comma and full stop. Since every sentence in Malayalam ended in a finite verb, the sense was clear even without a full stop. Take the case of an example here. In English, Ram, let's say Ram was bitten by a snake. The order is subject, verb, and then object. In Malayalam, it will be said as Ramane Pambu Kadichu. So here the order is subject, object, and ending with a verb, so that the sense is clear there. When it comes to comma, Malayalam manages by using a suffix called So actually replaces the comma, and it can also replace the word and. So the example here, in English, Rama, Krishna, and Gopi together went to forest can be said as Ramanum, Krishnanum, Gopiyum Kudi, Katil Poi. So here the comma is replaced by use of a suffix. Parenthetical clauses, punctuation such as brackets and long dashes, were originally never used again in Malayalam. Instead, such parts of sentences would appear separately as a full sentence. So the example here, the last one, in English it's possible to say my opinion and a parenthetical clause, whether you agree with it or not, is this. And this will be said in Malayalam. This is my opinion. Ende abhiprayam idanu. I don't know whether you will agree with it or not. അത് നിങ്ങൾ അംഗീകരിക്കുമോ ഇല്ലയോ എന്ന് എനിക്കറിയില്ല. The last part is a compound word. It actually combines 4 separate words. എന്ന് എനിക്ക് അറിയില്ല. So it's taken as, this is again another peculiar form of usage borrowed from Sanskrit. Nevertheless, the influence of the West, particularly the English language, popularized the use of punctuations later. Prose emerging as a popular form of written expression, once again influenced by the spread of English literary forms, was another reason for this, where use of punctuations helped complex sentence structures. One of the early uses of English style punctuation was found in a Malayalam grammar book by George Martin, published 1863. A later book by A.R. Rajarajavarma called Kerala Paniniyam, published 1893, recommended full use of English style punctuation marks in the construction, particularly of prose. This system, to quote from the book, this system of using symbols which removes doubt and ambiguity in the sentence construction has been accepted by us from English, unquote. He recommended use of 13 symbols, 13 punctuations, and gave them a Malayalam name for each of them. It's very interesting, some of these names. Comma was called Ankusham, semicolon was called Rodhini, and quotation marks were called Udharani. In fact, the punctuation marks are not really known by these names now, except maybe in literary circles. The advent of printing and later the influence of Western media, establishment of vernacular newspapers modeled on the English counterparts, all this gave rise to widespread use of punctuation marks in printed and web communications. Comma, full stop, question mark, quotation marks, and exclamation marks are some of the most commonly used punctuations used in Malayalam. Interestingly, end-of-the-line hyphens, which is a hallmark of English language in print, set particularly in justified columns, are not used in Malayalam typesetting. This is the case even with narrow newspaper columns set justified. Apostrophes are hardly used since Malayalam manages it with an appropriate suffix, again called ende or ude, like Deivathinde for the word gods, Pakshiyude for the word birds. Though Kerala Paniniyam recommended use of apostrophe for missing letters in compound words and also recommended the use of end-of-the-line hyphen, they were not really practiced. So in the exhibit here, you can see that most of the lines ending require hyphenation because they are all very oddly broken, but still Malayalam doesn't really use hyphenation because some of the things that I have marked in red very badly broken at the end, which definitely need. The other circled elements that you see here, they are italics typeface is used. Malayalam doesn't have a well-designed italics type, so it rather looks ugly. But this is followed from a visual punctuation English convention to set the names of books or newspapers, magazine in italics. Here is the names are the name of the newspaper Manorama, for example. So the convention is blindly being followed, but we do not have the kind of typeface to enhance the aesthetic value of such words. Coming to visual punctuation, the early newspapers in India were established by the British primarily for the British residents. These provided a good platform for natural adaptation of content, editing styles, form, typography, and production techniques to Indian media industry. In English, and later a smooth transition of the same to vernacular media. Taking cue from the English typography, many layout strategies were adopted in Malayalam media industry to visually articulate the content. The results are most pronounced in the case of magazine and newspaper typography and design, particularly in the area of magazines and newspaper. One other slide I would like to show. This is a very rare instinct of end-of-line hyphenation used in a Sanskrit text. I don't know when it is printed. It must have been very old. using the Devanagari script. Very rarely do we find using end of the line hyphenation. Right, so this is an example of the visual articulation, the space, manipulating the space and variation of types to articulate hierarchy. This is done fairly the same way that we find for example, in English. Here is another example using display type, even a drop cap, and then pull quotes in different sizes, a caption again trying to use the visual, activate the space with variation in typography. This kind of techniques can be found mostly in magazine covers, treatment of article or cover story headings, typographic variation of subheading, intro, special words, use of display typefaces for pull quotes, highlights, etc. Now, let me conclude. There could be a loss and a gain as a result of the influence of Western culture on Malayalam languages in print. Certainly, the West's contribution to Malayalam typography and its voluntary adaptation have been very valuable. Use of punctuation has indeed helped in experimenting with interesting and complex sentence structures and expressions in native languages in the hands of creative writers, while visual punctuation helped to create quite interesting and engaging layout. So we can see that the use of spacing and typographic variation as a means to convey structure and hierarchy has universal appeal, must beyond any cultural barrier. Gestalt laws of perception being the underlying universal principles here. With reference to effective use of typographic variation, vernacular typography still need to go far to capitalize on this account. Many more typical text typefaces and specific italic styles have to be designed, and also specific punctuation marks to go with each of the style. On another note, Indian languages do not have the capitals or small caps as we find in the Latin. Probably English typography can borrow this feature and set running text using only lowercase. Here is an example of a book, in fact, I will come to that. This exercise actually can save quite a lot of time and energy by avoiding several keystrokes while typesetting and formatting books. Another big advantage could be that it could relieve editors of publications from the capitalization nightmare. Actually, Chicago Manual of Style devotes quite a lot of section of pages just on sorting out the issues on capitalization. So probably editors could use that time for something more beneficial. Here is a book which was designed by me almost a decade ago, and this book on Rajaji from cover to cover uses just lowercase letters. And I was able to convince the author by saying that, this was done as a mark of respect to Rajaji's simplicity, which is talked about in the book. So the author was really convinced about that, and there was absolutely no issue for anybody to read this. I tested it even before actually printing. Copy editor had a lot of problems with it, saying that, this is not allowed. But people reading, maybe those who are very familiar with reading Indian languages, never had any such issues of reading. So this is something really possible. At the same time, I want to also say that capital letters in English is so beautiful in form. Actually, the whole inspiration for the classical typefaces came from the Roman capital, so you cannot really afford to discard them. So I would suggest that probably capitals can go as display big typefaces, which will reveal the beauty of the typefaces, and keep the text as only lowercase. The body text as lowercase. This probably can be an Indian contribution to the world language. Thank you very much. Yes, but no, my point was that there was absolutely no problem really for, yeah, anyway. Fine, yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Our third paper for today is called Sanyutta Toolbox From Spaceless Typography to Product Design by Professor Iko Avital and researchers Mr. Zook and Charu Monga from SCE, Shamoon College of Engineering, Israel and School of Design Arts, DU, Delhi University, India. We request Charu ma'am to please come and start the presentation.
Hello everyone. Shunyata. Today I'm going to present Shunyata toolbox method basically. This paper is from Professor Iko Avital and the researchers are Zook and I'm myself. Shunyata toolbox from spaceless typography to product design. Basically, this is STM method which we developed. Is a new method for design conception, drafting and styling stage during shaping and detailing processes in product design. STM offers to product and packaging designers a varied collection of unique physical object look that were carved from their own mother tongue or genuine dialect scripts. Shunyata toolbox method converts unseen spaces of typefaces as a rich potential of tangible shapes resources for product design. This will enrich the sketching stage of the design process by stimulating designers to explore new vocabulary of metamorphorical entity bodies as a new source of inspiration domain. Besides the regular inspiration of flora and fauna engineering competitors in the marketplace, STM will present to global design market a new voice of personal authenticity and the voice of cultural localization. So we take inspiration from our culture. There is in different cultures, it's like spaces we actually make with some kind of mudra, and the unseen spaces basically which we actually counterpart. So all kind of crafts and performances are by local culture context. We see these kind of spaces. Mother tongue, the ethnic group language a person has learned from birth is often the basis of the social linguistic identity. So we have taken different typefaces visually. Visual system of language represents through graphic means have evolved different human civilization, as you see. I think English word is missing. So we have taken inspiration from emptiness. Is a way of to look at sense experience that does not identify with the I making and my making process of the mind. The Buddha used the term great void to explain the profound meaning, the emptiness, the self nature, the voidness, the openness, the spaciousness, something that actually contains nothing, absolutely nothing. Shunya, the emptiness. Basically, a form became a new logo. If you see Shunya, there is empty space. That's how we see the positive space because of that. So is it like day and night, cold and hot, big and small, light and dark, short and long, dry and wet, sad and happy? So everything has two phases. Without one phase, you can't see other things. Like Steve Jobs, when he designed Apple, he actually studied calligraphy in the East. Some of his aesthetic simplicity has fused Apple products. They are still recognized and differ by form as a marketing strategy and leads to global design from standards to professional competitors. The positive and negative spaces. the products which Shinsen bullet train, which was inspired by Kingfisher's beak, Kingfisher bird. Engineers and actually designers tried to solve loud noise problem when the train came out of the tunnel because of change in the air pressure. They studied how Kingfisher drives from air into water with a little splashing. By redesigning the train front like a Kingfisher's beak, they succeeded to create such a quieter train, even to get faster speed and use less energy. The form of this high-speed train became a tangible logo, identified and branded it better than any written logo. The need of inspiration becomes a crucial factor in creating, designing and launching new products in the market. So Shunyata, basically it's emptiness which is actually perceived, which is unwanted of emotional condition, negative boredom, loneliness, depression, despair, grief. In old traditions, cultures have opposite different approaches. Emptiness is a part of fullness and otherwise. Shunyata is a God's creation, which is like myths, reality and imagination, motion and stopping, sound and silence, thing and nothing, space and spaceless, fullness and emptiness. In Lao Tzu said, silence is a source of great strength. Some cultures use silence as an inspiration. Some people meditate. Some people talk and then they meditate. So they try to reach within themselves. So same way, Rumi. In silence there is eloquence. Stop weaving and see how the pattern improves. The different cultures use emptiness and silence as a therapy, as a way of expressing things. How small truth has words which are clear, the great truth has great silence. Rabindranath Tagore. What is form? That is emptiness. What is emptiness? That is form. In the concept of yin yang, aspects of relation and interaction between interaction and dialogue, aspect of relationship. The essence of emptiness is that everything depends on everything else, as Dalai Lama said. The essence of emptiness, so here actually we have taken the alphabets and try to see as in what is negative and what is positive. So we have actually taken the positive and negative spaces and see how the forms are actually coming out from the negative spaces itself. Okay. The divided image of the poster basically is composed from two different contrasts, stimulating the reader's imagination to gain a sophisticated message of men and women interactions. White space in graphic design is an important element of layout design which enables the object in its all existence at all. The balance between positive and negative and the use of negative spaces is a key to aesthetic composition. Upscale brands often use layouts with little text and a lot of white spaces that can give a page, poster, package a classic, elegant and rich appearance. Real and virtual spaces maintain a close relations with illusion, narrative, time, territory, borders, local and global interaction, personal memories and performances, qualities of art. So this poster, Pundu poster about man-woman relationship, this one, a symbol exists, which is actually from the letter you can actually make out the a girl, the balloon. So negative spaces actually represent something. Anish Kapoor's installation on emptiness, Henry Moore's sculpture on emptiness, representation of emptiness in a sculpture, and architect Frank Gehry, magic of emptiness, you see it. So Shunyata praxis method, basically it's about seeing the negative spaces and creating how can it become the inspiration to make new products, new designs. So we have taken different languages here and try to see the negative spaces, try to get the inspiration from the negative spaces from it. So we have taken from different languages: Hindi, Hebrew, English, Punjabi, Tamil. So in Hebrew, we actually took out the negative part, and we see there is a certain kind of pattern which is coming. So it's more of a like jali kind of pattern, like this. In Hindi, the shabda, actually we have taken out the negative space, and it actually created a certain kind of pattern. It actually can be taken in any way as an inspiration. In English, we have taken A and created a pattern out of it. Hindi. So this way we try to experiment. So one of the negative spaces has been taken out, and a toy has been evolved from the shape called Baby Loco. So we have taken the negative space, tried to play with it, and this we made out of the shapes, like from typography from the negative spaces basically to the product as an inspiration. So we made this Loco toy. The same way from the shabda, we actually created a bug. So actually we have taken it. We have taken the 3D print out of assembled the small shapes, and actually dissected the whole thing, assembled the shapes, and made the toys with it. So this is just some of them. So the as an inspiration to make a toy. So this we came up with. This was a series of toys, so we call it Hindi Baby Loco Bug toy. A series of Hindi Baby Loco Bug toy. STM provides an opportunity to get back the flourish and authentic of forms and shapes. We are actually presenting you the Shunyata toolbox method in the 2 research levels, one exploring alphabets of many cultures, study the interaction of positive and negative spaces, the spaces among letters, words and lines, and the differences and uniqueness of other alphabets. Secondly, converting the emptiness of 3D into 3D spaces, objects, as a product. To explain the simplicity of Shunyata toolbox implementations, so here are the products which we made in the 2D and 3D spaces, and these are just a part of the collection which we actually figured out. To use the emptiness as a tangible material and as a potential for designers to profit authentic forms from their own mother tongue alphabet. That's it. Thank you. Thank you, sir. I can take questions, yeah. If you have any questions, please free to ask over the coffee. Thank you. No, sir, it's completely fine.
Sir, excuse me, sir. We request one of the winners of the poster competition, Miss Farah Madi, and one of the winners of the logo competition, Mr. Amol Polkade, to please come to the dais. We would request Mr. Mahendra Patel to please felicitate them, as they are our winners, and they won't be available later for our award ceremony. Can we have Farah Madi and Amol Polkade on stage, please?
Can you collect on behalf? Oh, good. So, announce her teacher. We are proud to have her teacher here.
We have
Farah. Farah was unable to make it today, but her teacher is here, so I think this is a very good sign. So let's do it.
So, thank you to have such a good student. Yeah, I'm sure you will be proud of him.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
One photograph with her.
Amol Polkade. Yeah.
So the fourth runners-up of the logo competition.
From there? Oh, good. From JJ. Proud to JJ.
So we request you not to go anywhere. Could we have all the presenters of the session's papers to kindly come and collect their felicitation, to be felicitated by Mahendra, sir? We'd like Gunnar Williamson. Okay, he's out. No? Yeah. Jai Govindan Menon. Ah.
And can we have Charu ma'am on stage, please, to be felicitated?
One.
Sorry, Charu, to stop you halfway. Yeah. It was very
We also request all the participants who are currently inside to inform their friends who are outside that eatables are not allowed inside the auditorium. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, our next session is on typography and local context. It will be manned by Professor Santosh Shirsagar from Sir J.J. Institute of Applied Arts, Mumbai. Santosh Shirsagar has received both his BFA and MFA by research from Sir J.J. Institute of Applied Art. He returned to his alma mater to teach and has been taking courses on Indian calligraphy, especially Devanagari, typography and visual communication design for the past 20 years. We request Sir to please come center stage and start the session.
Yeah, without taking much of your time and respecting everyone's time, I expect Dr. Suniti to come on stage and please give a presentation. Thank you.
Our next paper is called Concerns in Typography and Culture, a case study based on PTG Primitive Tribal Group's quota from the Nilgiris. It's by Professor Suniti S. Vadalkar, who is from the Foundation for Liberal and Management Education, Flame, Pune, India. We request ma'am to please start the presentation. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, Santosh. Thank you. Sorry? Yeah, yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah. I want somebody to begin the film when I tell. Okay. respected designers, typographers, my calligraphy colleagues, and my very dear students. Namaskar and good morning. I'm very happy to be here to share my research journey. Since yesterday we have traveled through Singapore and Sri Lanka and seen and heard so much about Malayalam to Modi scripts. Today, through this short presentation, I shall take you to the Blue Mountains of southern India, commonly known as the Nilgiris, to introduce you to a community called as the Kota. Before I tell you about the theoretical part of it and the typography and their culture, we'd like to see just a 1-minute film to get an understanding of how this community is. Please.
Come on, ma'am, you can do it.
Please stop. Thank you. I could go on and on till the cows come home, but I have been told to stick to time. Okay, so that was just in a nutshell to give a glimpse of the Nilgiris of southern India and also to introduce you to this community called as the Kota tribe. As you see, women dominated. Okay, so I'll be addressing 3 topics in my presentation. First is culture in general and that of the Kota community. Second, typography of the Kota script, and thirdly, my concerns related to this particular script. Now, in the institute where I teach, we have a unique undergraduate program called as the Discover India program, wherein we as faculty, as mentors, get a chance to travel along with a group of 10-12 students, which you saw in the film also, to various parts of India to do research on culture-centric topics. And as today we have heard from Professor Greg and also yesterday from Deshna different definitions on culture. I shall skip this slide and move ahead. Yesterday Shri Ganesh Devi, with his thought-provoking brilliant keynote address, spoke on a macro level about the tribal languages in India being uprooted from official thinking of languages and the need for tribal languages to be organically rooted. Today I present one such case study. Now the geographic location of this particular tribe. The Nilgiri Hills is one of the smallest districts of Tamil Nadu. The word Nilgiri means blue mountains because of the haze of the clouds and mist which envelopes the range. The name Nilgiri has been given to the land by the people living at the foot of these mountains. The hill has a total area of 2,549 square kilometers with an average elevation of 6,000 feet. This district shares borders with predominantly 3 other regions, namely Kerala from the west, Karnataka from the south, and by Coimbatore from the southeast. Currently, there are 4 indigenous tribes in the Nilgiri regions: the Kota, who are artisans; the Todas, who are pastoral communities and also known as the lords of the soil; the Badagas are farmers and cultivators who live an agrarian life, while the Kurumbas are hunters who hunt honey, a very, very risky job which they do, who live a nomadic life. The traditional role of these communities has brought them into a healthy symbiotic relationship with each other and helped maintain equilibrium within the Blue Mountains of the south. So you can see in the slide over there, right on top, you have these 2 communities, the Toda and the Kota, where we went to do research about these 2 communities. The central government of India has identified the Kota as one of the 75 PTGs, that is a primitive tribal groups in India. The rationale behind the identification of being termed as rural or as primitive is based on these 4 factors. 1, pre-agricultural level of technology, stagnant population, extremely low literacy rate, and subsistent level of economy. Now just a brief to understand the culture of this particular community. The Kota name is derived from Ko, meaning king. The Kota people believe that their forefathers were kings. The place where they have settled is called as a Kokkal. The name Kotagiri implies to the mountain of the Kotas. This significance was given by the people during the time of British rule in India. The name Kota was given by outsiders. They address themselves as Kove. They are known for their isolation and their unwillingness to meet or mix with outsiders. They are currently around 2,000 only and are fast declining. The Kota are consanguineous tribes which are related by blood. The act of marrying closely related individuals has taken place because of the tribe's voluntary isolation in the community. The Kotas speak the Kota language of Kove month, a Dravidian language closely connected to the Todas, also which has strong linguistic affiliations with very early Tamil and Malayalam. All Kota speak Badaga and Tamil as well, as in the past they had to communicate with other people who didn't know their language. They are inclined towards religion and spiritual belief. Interestingly, the Toda community do not have a script yet. So we went to study the scripts of these two communities, but we came back with only the Kota script. The Kotas are craftsmen, musicians and drummers, and the ones extending these services to other adjoining communities. These Kota tribal communities are experts in art and craftsmanship. Now I'll briefly take you to 3 life rituals which are very interesting in this community. One is marriage. The women in Kota tribe only marry their blood relations or relatives. The wedding is a simple affair where the bridegroom bows to the feet of the bride's father, pays a token fee of anything between 50 paise to 100 rupees, and there is no conventional band baja barat system over there. That is the end of the beginning and end of the marriage. It's so simple. Coming to the religion, the Kota has a number of deities, some traditionally their own and some taken from Hindu religion. The Kota believe that their gods or Somi live in heaven or Kalingiri, which is somewhere in the sky far above the sun. They revere anything associated with the sky, such as the sun, moon and stars, which they say possess virtues which are otherwise lacking in earthly being space. Kota people paint their faces in ghost-like blue color to signify the transformation of a boy to a man. They believe that in order to become a man, a child must die. Thus, the ghost-like blue paint is an indication of the death of their childhood. In the past, they would sacrifice wild animals after the boy's schooling is completed. Today, gifts of money have taken the place of sacrificing wild animals. The Kota do not consider themselves to be Hindus. However, there are various temples in and around the settlements where deities such as Lord Krishna are worshipped. All the Kota villages are bound by certain limitations, a particular hairstyle and dress code that needs to be maintained. The cow is a sacred animal of this community. Their gods do not have human manifestation. Lord Ainur, which represents fire, and Lord Amanor, which represents a bow and arrow, are their main gods. Their rituals are different from other tribes. Now, even a ritual like death, there are 2 types of funeral ceremonies in this particular community. The first one being the green funeral, in which the cremation is shortly after the death of a person, and the second is called as a dry funeral, which is held once a year or once in 2 years for all the deaths that have occurred since the last funeral. And the terms are analogy to a cut plant. At the first funeral, the loss is green and fresh in the mind, and at the second, it is dried out. So here we see the Kota women with a peculiar hairstyle and a very peculiar way of wearing their saris, very similar to the Malayalam way of wearing the color and the typical golden band, but different in its own aspect. So now we come down to the main topic, that is this particular script called as a Kota script, and here you see Guru Kanak Raj, and we were fortunate to get this small booklet as the first dictionary in the year 2010 in the month of May when we visited him. So I'll show you this dictionary during the break for those who are interested, and a few slides to see how this script has similarities between Malayalam and Tamil in case they do. So enveloped in urban settings with languages and literacy being easily available to us, it is difficult for us to imagine that there do exist people, cultures and communities who are still trying to figure ways of creating visual expressions to their verbal language. Guru Kanakrajji, the Kota priest, has created the first Kota dictionary, a script which was born in 2010. The Kotas are indigenous people who amongst all the Indian languages are the ones with no retroaphasic vowels, like the ones say tr or r. These vowels do not exist in this particular script. What you see right on top is the Tamil letter forms a, r, e, e, u, u, the vowels, and below them are the Kota letter forms. Here you see few others: t, d, th, dh, p, b, k, g. Now, so the total number of vowels in this particular script of Kota are 11, the consonants are 21, and the combination of vowels and consonants are 230. So the total numbers are 252, which are more than the Tamil letter forms. Now if we see the words right to the extreme left, we have certain words which we identified as come, go, eat, drink. So if in the Tamil language if come is va, it is va in Kota as well. But there are differences in other words, like if go is po in Tamil, then it is oak in Kota. So not all the words are similar, but they do have their own transformation and adaptations according to the culture and according to their own language. So there are many more pages, but I'll stop over here because it is just a repetition. So to conclude, we can see the nascent stage of the Kota script. It has yet to develop the fonts that can be printed. All the Kota letters in the dictionary are handwritten alongside the Tamil letters which do have fonts. As discussed, the most unique factor of this paper is primarily acknowledging the birth of a script in the beginning of the 21st century. The intention of presenting this paper among this august audience is not merely to create awareness, but to derive means to honor and preserve a script that is just born. There couldn't be a better platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Suniti, Dr. Suniti. Yeah, quickly, no questions for audience right now in the formal time, but few comments which will encourage questioning to a speaker during the lunch time. That being a typography community, we expect the process of writing, the tools, the surfaces, how it is written, and it looks simplified than the Tamil, and those questions I suppose you can ask Dr. Suniti in the lunch time, because most of our presentation is occupied with, yeah. It's good that I got a chance to read her whole paper. More than about 6 pages spent on the culture discourse, and 3 lines about Kota script, and 4.5 image tables, which just tells me the comparison of Tamil and Kota, in which I found the Kota is very simplified than Tamil, and I got really stunned because it is again a alpha syllabary kind of a script and a different kind of a form. We would love to know, it is not born, it is reviving. Whether it is born means it is done now, or whether it is reviving. We would like to understand from you in lunchtime what Kanakaraj told you about all those things, about the shapes, how the shapes are produced traditionally. Yeah? Thank you, Dr. Suniti, for your discourse, and let's go for the next speaker.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Our next paper is called the Gunjula Gandhi Script, a new tracing by S. Sridharamurthy, who is a typographer and guest faculty at the National Institute of Fashion Technology, Hyderabad, India. We request sir to please take over and start the presentation.
So this is an auspicious sound to welcome you all. And a wake-up call. Thank you. See, I'd not focus more onto the cultures of the tribals and the making of the panic methods to trace each character and do the fonts and all. I quickly go to the context that the whole world was thinking that there was no script for goons. And many intellects from Goan community and other design community also try to contribute some scripts for their language. So this, I try to explore you about those things. Gondwana was a very big kingdom and they were very particular about their culture and their stability. I quickly go to those things that into direct topic. The National Manuscripts Mission under the guidance of Mr. Day2 conducted nationwide manuscript survey. Among them, these scripts were found in a village, a remote village of Adilabad, and nobody could identify which language is this, which script is this. So there are only 4 people who were able to read those things aged from 92 to age 25. So Gondwana, they have a big stretch in Maharashtra and Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh. We had a great information in the keynote address given by the first day. They would have gone a separate state based on their strength. Okay, this is Gunjala, is a village where your mobiles don't work, where you will not have a contact with any modern world. But there, these manuscripts were found. A reason being, we named it as a Gunjala Gondi Lipi. These were the some of the manuscripts where it found. In first love or first sight, you feel like it is something nearer to Modi or something. But the people who can read this Modi can't read this language. The script is totally different from it, neither mixing with any Indian scripts. So I've been following these newspaper coverages done by several regional newspapers and of course Hindu. That Professor J.V. Thermal who was supposed to accompany me, or I have to accompany him, because of some reasons he could not come. He was a retired person. Most of us Indians know that people won't work when they are in their jobs. We can't expect a person after retiring and doing something for the community. So that is a great thing which attracted me, and I went there and said that unless there is a script to be easily acceptable by the people and easily learnable, and you can't document those things, otherwise the history will vanish. This happened the script evaluated several things. All Indians know the history of first fight against Britishers is 1857 by the Sipahi ka jo hua tha. In these scripts, when they were translated into Telugu and Hindi, it has been found that they took help from Rohillas to fight against them, support them. And unfortunately, some of them were caught, and more than 300 people were hanged to one tree at a time. The tree is still in Nirmal, Adilabad district. So first I want to make a font for a textbook. I was keen on textbooks. I've been talking a little bit about children's and their textbook and their fonts since some time. It is not very technical thing that I can teach somebody about typography. Font we mean immediately because it is looking like Shiro Rekha, and we try to take the Devanagari weights and start up some fonts. But later I thought first I have to document the material which is available, and I have to make a textbook first. So I took a monolinear thing. This is the simplest form I started my font. Because a textbook, you need someone to write as a line, and then a dotted line, and then they identify as a font. So I started in that way and used the way in other way around. I think it is clear. I need not spend much time on these things. Okay. So then, because there are few people who can read and write comfortably, we spend a lot of time going n number of times to Adilabad and made some basic shapes. Then what we call Barakhadi, the 12 sounds table. Then this is the form we started. They gave us something, we fine-tuned to one manuscript thing and converted into glyphs. So these are the two books. Not to predominantly say that my book is much developed. I want to show things. One is by Shivalingapoti, and another is developed by, including the font has been developed by Mukund Gokhleji. So this is, I quickly go through these things because these are the basic things. After that I'll quickly shift and we'll have some time to talk about it. So the red letters, whatever you are seeing there, are not in their character list. And this is the order. It is not in the phonetical order what we have in India. So they have a different structure to write them. That is the basic difference. And number systems, okay. And then this is the first one, which is done by Mr. Munshi Mangal Singh in 1980. 1928 is a wrong thing which I learned just 3 days ago when I met Mr. Mukund Gokhleji. He corrected me that this is not 1929, which was informed in the internet. So they tried to make a script out of it. And the other one is a professor from AP. In 2010 she tried to do something. All the round forms are just a framing up to the character shape. Don't go by that. I try to clean up all the frames and try to bring them into one shape. She says Gond is different and Gond is different. So those are the things which have been done by the people like me who are not Gonds. But suddenly I came to understand to place them in the journey of a character of all languages from Brahmi to now, and where the Gunjala Gondi is much more advanced and writable things in comparison with the other script developed by very eminent people like the living legends like our Mukund Gokhleji, and almost 100 years ago. I can quickly go through this. I think these presentations are available on net, so don't bother that you miss some slide. Just you can have a quick look about 1, 2 and 3 and 4. Last one is Gunjala Gondi one. And this chart is from Ganesh Vidya, like how sounds have been developed in each language. So I didn't cover it totally because one has to understand at least, because this comes under Dravidian kind of structure. So for the sake of comfortability in writing, गोखले जी ने इसको थोड़ा बदला है so that other things can come. I don't know why she changed in 2010 after 90 years of first attempt. I can share this with anybody. So like this A and O, these two O sounds are not there in Devanagari and also in this. So this is the character to easily identify between them. I quickly take this out. This is the Barakadi. I tried to contact several people, and my friend Mr. Karambir Singh Rohila also tried to contact several professors. I asked this lady who has developed this writing system, आपने बाराखड़ी develop किया क्या? No, अभी नहीं. We haven't developed. Let the people learn till here, then we'll try to develop. So that was the stage. So each character and their barakadi in different stages. The most bottom one is Gunjala Gondi Lipi. I've skipped wherever there is no character. Okay, this is one character which we can see from the ages before Brahmi and caves and many things. What if the Barakadi comes to this? So to write one character, how many times we have to lift the pen? And to complete one paragraph, how much time can anybody spend to do that? Like it is more than the writing capital letters in Roman scripts. So this is just a comparison about those things. There are some variations between one script to other script. Yeah, I'm sorry. So these are the two scripts which have been evaluated by somebody like me to enthusiast or do something. I don't know how come these traffic signals help in writing, and how much time it will take to write one single glyph. We have scripts like Malayalam having too many curves. We have scripts, more complex scripts, more beautiful scripts and other things. But when writing these kind of things, maybe a difficult to the language. So finally, I think that they have tried to do something for the society, feeling like this, my self-satisfaction मैंने किया. Someone was saying that self-satisfaction का translation ऐसा होता है, self is खुद and satisfaction is खुशी. So it is a suicide, to back translation to English. So and I think they didn't spend much of time with them or understand them, didn't really ask them whether you can really write these things, at least in 2010. I'm not talking about 19th centuries or 20th centuries attempts. So they look really like aliens. Now I want to show you how to go about it. So if I make a form, how to run. It's a village where they doesn't have money or sources or something. We have been doing this voluntarily since more than a year. So if we keep in some existing commercial package, so there are no people to really buy some software for about 5,000-10,000 rupees. Forget about the development cost and all. So we tried to keep all these things in Unicode Devanagari mapping में हमने किया. We tried to place all the characters. But the problem is the E ki matra will come left in Devanagari choti E ki matra, and the longer one Dirgha Velanti right side mein aayegi. But Gunjala Gondi Lipi, that short and longer vowels will come onto the right. So we tried hard, and last Typoday when it happened in Guwahati, I met Mr. Karambar Singh. So he said, sir, aap nahi kar rahe to hum bhi karenge, we'll also do something for you. So for the textbook we have done it, we copied the E ki matra from here to then next place, and we completed the book. So by producing a textbook, we can make the next generation to understand, learn things. But I came to know recently when I met Mr. Mukund Gokhale in Dinanath Mangeshkar's hospital. He was at the hospital and he was feeling very bad that I am in Pune, but I am unable to come to Typoday and listen to you on Gunjala. No sir, I can come. I spent at least 3 to 4 hours with him in the hospital. He was very happy to see these things. So we said this, we want to do this. Someone out of the Gond community and understands Gond and can't learn Gond script now, but they can contribute their articles or their experiences and their growth typed in Unicode Devanagari, and suddenly we can almost transliterate kind of thing into Gondi Lipi. I don't think anyone know that there is a possibility in Unicode to transliteration. I am not aware of much. If I am wrong, please correct me. Is there any facility to convert or transliterate from one language, one script to another script? Thank you. So when this happens, nobody needs to invest more money or to take pains to do this. When we have completed this textbook, nobody came forward to print it. After the completion, it has been initiated by the local district collector and the ITDA, which is Integrated Development for Adivasis and Authority. And suddenly Professor Tirmal Rao sir has joined in CDAST, which is Center for Dalit and Adivasi Studies and Translation. It happened within 2 months. Very drastic developments have been done in these two months by him. Scholars from CDAST came there, translated the whole things into Hindi and Telugu. So switch to this monitor, please. Yeah, she is the one who learned at her the age of 8, and when she saw the book, first draft in black and white, those were the tears. And he is very happy even in the hospital to spend time, look at my books and the presentation. This is the last question. So this is according to those charts which you saw. I'm sorry, am I audible? So this is the Devanagari A in the 1st century, and it took almost 1000 years to convert into this, and another 1000 years to come into this form. It happened to Roman script also. The previous presenter has shown us from the rock scripts to other things. So these are the first attempts by Gond community and some other people. Now we are in the 21st century. We have learned in the first day keynote address that most of the languages and scripts are dying. How much time these things will take to come into writable form, unless anyone takes the steps to bring them out and make them font or readable things and document things. So these are the people I want to thank, and this is Dhanya Dhanya in Gondi. Thank you all for listening to me.
Thank you, Sridhar. It was really enlightening for us that we really need a designer to design typeface than anybody else. This presentation, in a way, proves that. I ask audience if they have any questions. If you don't have any questions, you can always take some time to digest. Yes?
Please.
Hi, Sridhar.
Hi.
Yeah, I think you are addressing only the script part of it.
Yeah.
But is there a language challenges also? Because this Gond community is perhaps split across states.
Yes.
So maybe MP,
Yeah,
Chhattisgarh,
Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra,
Orissa,
yeah.
current AP.
Yes.
Okay. So are there any challenges of the language, extended language of the state?
Yeah.
Okay, because they have their mother tongue, there is a state of the language, and then the script challenge.
Yes.
So did you encounter
Actually,
any challenges?
this time and other constraints made me stop, but I have to say a piteous situation in tribal learning system. If he has to learn, there is a policy that everybody has to start their learning in their mother tongues, even Gondi, Koya, Kolami, and many things. So a 5-year-old kid has to learn complex script and like Telugu to learn Gondi. There are books in maybe Marathi making children to study their mother tongues in tribal languages, but initially they have to learn their own mother tongue other than their mother tongue, which usually a mother tongue children is learning very late. I think Santosh Kshirsagar is working on Mr. Santosh Kshirsagar is working on children's writing and other things. So we, as being a mother tongue students, we try to learn our own script after age of 5 or 6. But a tribal person has to learn the local language first and to read their mother tongues. It is a very pathetic situation. And other scripts are more complex and more sounds are very, very complex shapes will come into that. And Mr. Ishwarkar, the thing is, there are many dialects. Even we say the Punala Marathi, Shuddh Marathi. The 200 kilometers, which is more developed, developed by all means, we can't expect a good Marathi in Bombay. So dialects, and we take some words from several languages. We invite other languages to come, like Zeb and Zabar, Nuktes, and have been entered into other scripts also. So there are issues and there are few characters less. Actually, we had just a beginning. We will be meeting a lot of Gond people, taking their advices, including Mukund Gokhleji and many type designers. So we will fill up those 5 characters so that those things will be useful for other communities also. So we just started, sir. We haven't done anything now.
Great. With that note, I think we should stop. And if you have any more questions and curiosity, I can imagine we can keep it on the lunchtime on a personal basis. Thank you, Mr. Sridhar and Mr. Karamveer Singh. May I request volunteers to invite the next presentation, please.
Thank you, sirs. Our next paper presentation is called Towards Holistic Indic Font Design Software, Observations from the Study of Devanagari Font Design Process. The paper presenters are Mr. Yashodeep Gholap, Mr. Ted Harrison, and Mr. Adam Twadork. Yashodeep Gholap and Adam Twadork are currently indisposed, so we have Mr. Ted Harrison with us to help us. Yashodeep Gholap is a font designer from India. Mr. Ted Harrison is the director of the Font Lab, and Adam Twadork is a product and marketing manager for Font Lab USA. We request you to please take over, sir. Thank you.
All right, thank you all for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here in Pune. This is the 4th time I've been to a Typo Day, and ever since the first time that I came, which was in Ahmedabad, we've been interested in finding ways to make it easier to design Indic scripts. After a couple of years, we figured out that just going around and asking people was probably not the best way, because there are so many different opinions and different people everywhere. So we decided last year to go about it in a more formal fashion. And as luck would have it, just at that same time that we were thinking about this, Yashadeep Golap contacted us and asked if we had anything that an intern might be able to do at Font Lab. So we gave him the job of designing a study to find out what were the differences between the Latin type design process and the Indic type design process. Of course, there's lots of reasons to do this. From the commercial point of view, we'd like to have as good a product as possible. But also, from a cultural point of view, it's important. India is becoming a much bigger market now, and India is developing rapidly in terms of typography and type design these days. So we wanted to find out, what were the differences. The way we went about this was to do interviews. We wanted to get in-depth knowledge from beginning to end of the type design process from people who were involved in it. So we went out and recruited a number of people, and this was a pretty lengthy interview. It's at least an hour of really in-depth question answering and the like. And Yashadeep interviewed all the people, and then he compiled the results and analyzed them. And this, in fact, is his presentation, which he put together here. But unfortunately, he's in Denmark now, and he couldn't make it here to this conference to be actually presented. So there are a number of things that we wanted to look at particularly. You can see them on the screen there. The questionnaire that we designed was made in order to bring out these kind of attributes and differences in the font making process. And so the first thing that we studied was actually the process and compared it to Latin type design process. What we found was that in the overall process there is not that much difference. It's in the details and the qualitative aspects of the process that we found a lot of differences. Now, the first stage in any type design process is always the idea, the design idea, and sketching a few of the preliminary characters and figuring out what the font is going to look like, getting the whole design concept down. And so there were a few things that were brought out in this character sketching stage, which are interesting from the Indic point of view. There's a lot of design judgment that goes into these fonts, so that's affected by Indic culture and history and the like, and so you'd expect it to be different from Latin fonts in that respect, and so it is. The second stage is the digitization of the characters, or actually the development of the whole character set. Once you have the initial design idea in hand, then the next thing is to take that idea and make the whole font from it. That is, all the glyphs, design all the glyphs. Now, some people do this physically and then scan the characters in, while other people just go directly to the computer to do it. But in either case, there's a lot of things about font proportions that are different between Indic fonts and Latin fonts that need to be taken into account here that we found out. And rhythm, spacing, balance, access, all those things also tend to be different in Indic fonts than in Latin fonts. The third step is developing all the glyphs. Once you've got your glyph set decided on and the design idea, then you need to really flesh it out, get all the different details in. Here you have to decide how many glyphs there are going to be in the font. While an Indic open type font generally has 600 to 1,000 glyphs, that's not all that different from a good, decent commercial Latin fonts. So in that case, things are pretty much the same, but they're different in terms of things like of course, the completion and the glyph set and how much time it takes and how much work it is to define those glyph sets and define the glyphs, develop the glyphs. And one of the reasons is there's so much more spacing and kerning, it seems, that have to be done in Indic fonts as opposed to Latin fonts. And one of the things we found is that maybe the tools aren't quite up to snuff for Indic fonts in this regard. The letters tend to be somewhat more complex than than Latin characters are. And the Devanagari typefaces have more than 2,000 kerning pairs. That would be quite a lot for a Latin font to have. And they're not standardized. In Latin fonts there are many sort of standard character sets and characters you know are going to need to be spaced and kerned more or less individually. And that's not nearly as efficient to do in an Indic font as it is in a Latin font. And this is the really big difference in the process part here, is the OTF development, because there's not much that really needs to be done in terms of OTF development in a Latin font. There's lots that can be done, but it's not absolutely necessary for the font to be a good font, depending on what you want it to do. But in Indic fonts, it is absolutely necessary, and there's a lot of work that goes into this particular step in the process. And in fact, Indic fonts consist mostly of the things that are added in this process, things that you don't find in Latin fonts at all. So these kind of things we took a close look at, and the way that they were done, how the glyphs were managed, the various processes that were involved in this particular step, so forth and so on, because this is one part of the process which, while it's the same as Latin, it's qualitatively a lot different. It's much more time-consuming and difficult than in Latin fonts. Then there's the hinting process, also fairly difficult in Indic fonts compared to Latin fonts. Here, especially fonts developed again for low-res applications like television or low-res screens and things like that, you may have to do a lot of hinting for these. And in fact, in these sort of specialty fonts that are actually developed to be used in low-res applications, it's not unusual at all to start and work backwards. That is, start with sort of the bitmap font and then work backwards to get the final vector font from it. In other words, start from the hints and then work backwards to get to the main character. And finally, there's the testing phase. Just like in Latin fonts, Indic fonts need to be tested, and it's a bit more difficult for Indic fonts, actually, in the testing phase. There's a lot more things to be tested, and one of the things we found out that was that the software, again here, wasn't quite up to the task in some respects. So font designers need their own customized testing files here, and we found out that people preferred to be able to test multiple things simultaneously, which is not really very easy to do in current software. So as you can see, during that process, this process of designing an Indic font, there are lots of technical challenges. We got, of course, plenty of suggestions from the type designers who we interviewed themselves, but the analysis also brought out a lot of things where improvements could be made. Notably, the font info panel, especially about the metrics, vertical metrics, and things like that. This is pretty technical, and not many people really understand this, and especially in respect to Indic fonts, not many people understand this. So this is an area where we need to make it easier, and we may need to make it easier to understand as well. Similarly, in font naming, The rules for naming fonts are a little bit arcane. They're not exactly difficult, but they're not really memorable either. So we need a better way to name fonts, preferably a way to name them automatically. So this one we've actually pretty much done, because in our latest released product, TransType 4, we have a very sophisticated algorithm for naming fonts and organizing them in font families, all done automatically. That'll be incorporated into future versions of the font editors as well. So this particular item on the wish list, we're already well on the way for. In the font table, we found that Indic type designers really like to have many different ways to organize the glyphs or the characters. They love to have different viewing modes and markings and filters and so forth and so on. And while you can do these things now, they're not as easy as they could be in the software. So one of our jobs is to try to improve that. Import options and file formats, well, you know, those are a bit limited as well. And we need to be able to import more different formats, especially all the different Illustrator formats. For instance, we need to make it easier for people to import those into fonts to be able to work with. Guidelines are another area where there's significant difference between Indic fonts and Latin fonts. Latin fonts all have a very nice standard set of guidelines which everybody knows. Indic fonts usually need more and different guidelines than Latin fonts. And in fact, they probably should be pretty much customizable guidelines. This is something which we really can easily incorporate into future versions. Neighbors and shape groups in FontLab Studio 5, of course, you can find these kind of things, but they're much more important in Indic fonts than they are in Latin fonts. So we need to also make these easier to use. And multiple layer editing functionality. We don't really have this in FontLab right now, but some designers, it seems, like to do a lot of things in different layers, especially for these rather ornate hand lettering or signage type fonts that they make. We have a couple layers in FontLab Studio now, but they're not really set up like Illustrator's layers, for instance, to do entirely different things, and each one has more or less dedicated purpose right now. And then there's Python scripts. There are a lot of little tedious things that need to be done in building a font. And so lots of people had suggestions about, you know, what could we just write a Python script for to run real quick to do these kind of things. This is not, well, it depends, I guess, on your level of skill and your orientation towards programming, how difficult this is to do. The Python scripting language is not terribly difficult, but it may be a bit intimidating to people who are not thinking in terms of scripting. And finally, there were some bugs and crash reports also during the that people found during their font making activities, and these seem to mostly have to do with the processing of large Indic fonts with lots and lots of spacing and open type features in them. It was a bit surprising because, of course, FontLab Studio can handle Chinese, Japanese, Korean fonts with up to 64,000 characters with, you know, relatively few problems. But those are a lot different than Indic fonts because the Chinese, Japanese, Korean fonts use almost zero open type features. So it's not like there's a whole lot of internal programming to the glyphs. And that the opposite is the case in Indic fonts, where the majority of the glyph may actually be the internal programming part of it there. So here we see FontLab Studio has a problem when it gets to these big fonts with large numbers of kerning or metrics or open type kind of features. Now this one is really more, I think, a failure of education than it is actually a limitation of FontLab Studio. The designers said that they wanted to be able to edit two masters simultaneously in a multiple master file. But in fact, you can edit two masters simultaneously in a multiple master file. So obviously we didn't get that across in the documentation somehow or other. But it can be done, and in fact it's a very efficient and easy way to create a font family, is to use this particular facility. So here we probably need to improve the documentation and make it a little bit more obvious how to do this kind of thing. The direct suggestions from the designers were things about they wanted everything in one place, for instance. That's where the holistic part of this presentation comes in. They wanted not to have to switch between this program and that program and then another program and then another program to get everything done that has to be done in building a font. They wanted an all-in-one piece of software. And they also wanted this quick test function where they could quickly and easily install it on the operating system and test it. And in fact, that does already exist in FontLab Studio and TypeTool. Another little failure of education there, because I guess it's not obvious enough for people. So when we've looked at all these things, what recommendations can we come up with for improvements for the software? Well, file formats, obviously, everybody wants to be able to import and import every file format they can think of, and that's a relatively easy thing to add. We shouldn't have much difficulty there. File info is a bit different. We've got the font naming thing, probably got that nailed down, but the metrics and auto calculation for vertical metrics particularly, and those other sort of technical things that appear in the font info panel, that all needs to be made clearer, easier, and probably more automatic than it is now. Tracing forms, I mentioned before, a lot of people like to do their original sketches in a physical medium of some kind and then scan it in and do the digitization later. FontLab Studio does not have an internal type auto trace function to do this with, but we do have a separate product called ScanFont that does this, and is in fact optimized for scanning glyphs in there. Way back in the beginning it used to be a part of FontLab Studio, but it got separated out during the years. So we will probably need to add that back in again so that a really high quality auto trace function is included in the main product. The window view, there was a bunch of things in the font table which they wanted improved. I mentioned before the things about filtering, marking, cell ordering. Need better organizational tools, essentially, for the font table to make it easier to deal with large fonts. And then we need something that's a glyph edit interface that's more oriented towards the way that IndiCtype designers design. So this comes along and has to do with, again, the metrics and the matras, OTF programming, the metrics, the kerning, and so forth, getting that all together in one place and making it easier to deal with. Glyph window view again here, the quick function, we already have that, but shape, group, and neighbor functions, multiple outline layers, guidelines that can be custom named, all those kind of things need to be added to the glyph window. And for testing, we need to have better ways to print out tests. Now, a lot of these actually are in there, but some of them need to be optimized so they work better for Indic type fonts. Of course, they were designed originally with Latin fonts in mind, and not particularly with multiple master fonts in mind. So while multiple master fonts aren't used commercially anymore, that is, there aren't applications out there where consumers, end users, actually use multiple masters fonts. They are very much a good design tool, and FontLab Studio will continue to use them and improve on them. And these are some ideas that people had about ways that could be improved as well. Metric panel, They really wanted, again, in the sort of all-in-one idea, they wanted to be able to do metrics and kerning and maybe the OpenType feature previews, things, all these things in one place, rather than having to switch back and forth between windows. Weight interpolation, other things also, same sort of thing. This is the multiple master thing again. Need to make it easier to use the multiple masters, to learn how to use the multiple masters, improve the documentation. And then the built-in Python functionalities. There's, a reason why FontLab Studio has a built-in API for Python. And that's so that users can write Python scripts. So for these particular ideas, we'd like you out there, especially the students out there, to take an interest in these particular things and many other possibilities as far as Python scripts are concerned. It may be a little intimidating at first because it's writing in a scripting language. It's not drawing things with a pen or with a computer tool. But the rewards are really, really quite astronomical if you can think about how much work you can avoid by just writing maybe a Python script that's 10 or 12 lines long. Python is a really easy language to learn. The documentation for it is all over the internet. It's been stable for many years now. The specific documentation for using it with FontLab Studio is in the FontLab Studio manual and in the Python page on our website. So for these particular ideas, we'd like to throw this one back out to you out there and have people out there develop the Python scripts. Don't wait for us. Don't be bashful. The tools are all there. Why don't you just go ahead and do it? Finally, the OTF features. OpenType is a very, very important part of Indic scripts, Indic fonts, and we need really to improve the development tools that we have for that. Again, it would be nice if we can do the GDEF, GPOS, and GSUB tables a lot more intuitively, visually, and the like. And testing them also can be made a lot easier, and so that's also part of the program. So at this point, I think I'm pretty much close to the end. I'd like to play a little video that Yash made up to talk about these ideas for the new design interface. Let me see if I can get it here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ted. It is definitely enjoyed by the whole young audience. I have a quick small question, which I'm not a recent FontLab user, but if you can tell me that CC, CV, can we test on the compare 3 letters or 4 letters at a time? That's one testing, which generally we do. And then the second is on the entire full paragraph testing within the software.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the second question there.
Consonants plus consonants plus consonants plus vowel. 3-letter testing.
Okay, yes.
On display, on the same display, like drag and drop or typing. Is it there in the new feature? I don't know. I'm not user from last few years now.
Yes, all those things are coming up in our new code base, which is called Victoria, which we're using to develop the new font editors now.
It's a great news. It's a great news. I ask audience if they have...
The question that everybody always asks is, when is FontLab Studio 6 going to come out? And the answer we always have to give is, we don't know.
Any questions? Quick questions? Yes.
Adam, I'm also with FontLab, or maybe a different way of answering is this last question that you said is when it's ready. It's going to be that's. But yes, one thing that I wanted to mention specifically for Indic is that in general, all the font editors I think so far that are on the market, including FontLab Studio, of course, they really were developed with no notion of complex scripts like Indic, Devanagari, or Gujarati in mind. But in our new code base, we are using HarfBuzz, which is an OpenType layout implementation that is compatible with Uniscribe. So basically, you can type in any Indic real text, and sort of you'll be able to design them, and you will be able to use pretty much all the Indic OpenType layout features right in the software, rather than outside and test. So you'll be able to work pretty much like in a text editor, and you'll get the same results in a text editor and in a font editor. So it will, you won't have to think about, okay, this is now different glyphs and they're gonna be shaped differently in a actual InDesign or Word. So that's really sort of an important step, I think. And of course, the new editor will support right to left and left to right. So Arabic, for instance, will be done just as easily as Latin or other scripts. So that's just a sort of to answer your question to some more detail.
Great, Adams. I cannot stop myself. About 20 years ago, next step is auto testing than just typing, because we need to actually test. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we realized that at least 25,000 combinations we have to test to make a OK font. So any auto testing features can be added as a next step.
Well, this is where actually we would like to have more, let's say, specific feedback from you. So for example, one thing that really is helpful when we are designing, when we're developing our software is, let's say, kind of sample sheets or specific kinds of testing that you are used to or that you would want to see. Because, for us, there's basically a multitude of different, let's say, type design cultures, and there are some people who are used to one way of making proofs that is maybe useful for, optical sizes, or maybe for script, calligraphic script, Latin typefaces, or for, Indic. Indic is obviously, Indic scripts have this very specific, there's lots of morphological shared shapes. There's a lot of combinations. So if you have, you know, design, let's say tests that you're using in maybe InDesign or some other things that you would want to see this type of visual testing, visual proofing, or maybe some lists or maybe some word lists that you use, and you would like us to sort of incorporate that at a core, just, you know, contact us or contact me, talk to me, submit that stuff. We will be very happy to look at it, because this is, you know, we want to basically, we don't have all the answers how, you know, you guys design typefaces. You have these answers, and you know what your sort of traditions and your best practices are, and we can help you encoding these practices right in a software at the early beginning, right at the heart, so you don't have to go through several loops or workarounds. But we need that input from you, from the type designers especially, who are working on Indic scripts. And as a just sort of brief thing, I actually said to our developers that, you know, for this new release, we basically have to kind of provide a good design environment for Indic scripts, because if we actually have done that, then most of the other scripts will be done as well, because the Indic scripts tend to be the most complex ones. So if we solve that, then, you know, Latin, Cyrillic, Hebrew, and the ones will be pretty much, they will also be good. And the solutions that are good for Indic scripts are often good for the others, for the other writing systems as well. So this is why we're specifically focusing also on Indic, or want to focus more.
Wow, that's great. We look forward for audience response to help and give such kind of list if you are working seriously in type design to Adams and have an interaction with Adams, because that is going to definitely save some people's life, not just few days and years. And next generation look forward to elegant typeface design. And yeah, yes, thanks. Great. Thanks, Adam. Yeah. Thank you again. And can I request volunteer to call next speaker?
Thank you, sir. Our last presentation for this session is called TypeCamp India, Pluralism in Design Education, by Dr. Shelley Gruendler, who is the founding director of TypeCamp International Canada. We welcome ma'am on stage and ask her to please start with her presentation. Thank you very much.
You're going to make it happen? Thank you. Okay, I know you're hungry. If you can hold on just a little bit, hopefully I can take your mind off food. I am not a type designer. I am not going to be talking about type design. I just want to let you know that. I'm a typographer. We're going to talk about typography. So, the world is shifting, and so is the world of typography and graphic design. However, the design education process is actually not making these changes. I think that type education has to be reformed to truly prepare you in this audience for the world. The designers need to look at the global society with a new perspective, because the fixed base knowledge is stifling you. TypeCamp was created as a new approach to learning design and typography. It is not a substitution, it is a fine-tuning for your type education. This talk focuses on TypeCamp as an example. It is a case study. So, let me first talk about type education. I get this question a lot. What book do I read so typography makes sense? What do I answer? All of them. It's true. I answer all of them. You do. You have to read a lot. You have to understand a lot. So there's no one book that's going to answer you. This is a good one, though. And I have to say I'm biased. This is Jan Mendorp. He is a friend of mine, but this is the best type textbook I have seen yet. I really like this. It deals with a lot of complex issues, and it deals with multilingual issues. There is no set of rules that will help you solve all your typesetting problems. You want one? Ain't going to happen. Anytime you see those top 10 lists of what you need to do to have better typography, don't pay attention to them because you can't just boil it down to 10 issues. There's no perfect combination of typefaces. I get this question all the time. Which typefaces do I combine? Well, you know what? There's lots of possibilities. There's no one answer. There's no one typeface that you can use for everything, although I think Meta is very close. But there's lots of possibilities. So how can I help people understand more about typography if it's hard, if it's complex? What I do is I help people to see type differently so that you can work with type differently. For the way I see it, type education is pretty much the same as it was 20 or even 50 years ago. A lot of teachers are teaching the way they learned, not the way they were taught, not the way that they learned. So, to me, a lot of what's going to be asked of you guys is entirely different than what was asked by me. You already know basic type. You already have digital design tools. Hopefully you're comfortable with InDesign and maybe even FontLab, and you're already comfortable with a lot of communication techniques. You are not better. You are not worse. You're just different than what it's been in the past. So I believe that if you want people to be innovative, you need to have innovative teaching, and then your learning will be innovative. So what's an example of innovative typography? Here's two of my favorites. Restraint. This is a typeface by Marion Banshees. If you have not heard of Marion Banshees, write that name down, go to banshees.com and see that work. It's pretty amazing. So this typeface was developed about 8 years ago, and it works horizontally and vertically. Marion does a lot of illustration and patterns. So you can have things work almost like Scrabble tiles. And then you can add on bits. And you can even do crazy things with color. Pretty cool. Letter Error Twin is my all-time favorite typeface. This is over 10 years old, probably about 12 years old now. It was developed for Minneapolis, St. Paul, two cities in the United States that are called the Twin Cities. I'll show you why it's cool. So these two guys at Letter Error, they did a lot of sketches. They sat there and drew and drew and drew, and they ended up with quite a variety of letters. Some were structured, some had chunky serifs, some were round, some were extra loopy. So they were trying to figure out what to do with it. What they came up with were letter forms that weren't necessarily on an X and Y axis. They came up with letters. What if they were a little bit of this, and a little bit of this, and a little bit of this? So they hooked it up to the weather. That means that if the temperature is cold, it's a little bit more one way. If it's really windy, it's a little bit more another way. These cities have very extreme weather, so the result is you can see what weather was happening when they typeset the piece. Cold, structured blocky serifs, warm, extra loops, and plain weird when it's windy on the weather. So how can we come up with more innovative projects like this? Remember, both of those are about 10 years old. I believe that the best learning comes from being comfortable. I don't want you to worry about grades. I don't want you to worry about comparing yourself to other people, and I want you to try new things without being scared. So I create projects that are unpredictable. I don't want you to try to figure it out in the very beginning. I want it to be complex and layered, so every stage you learn something different. I believe that the projects need to be interesting. Boring projects create boring work. And when I was in school, I did a lot of boring projects, and yes, I was bored. So I really think that it's a problem if you're aiming for perfection. Now, I think you got to screw up quite a lot to learn something. So I actually make sure that the projects will make you screw up. You're going to learn a lot more. A priority is learning from each other. Every class I've ever taught, I tell everybody, you're going to learn more from everybody in this room than you will from me. They never believe me, and by the end, they know I was right. Collaboration is incredibly important. People are exponential. Your ideas are exponential. They will be so much better if you share them with somebody else. A big fear is that, what if they steal it? Well, you know what? Let them steal it. You can come up with a better one, right? Let it go. If you're passionate about what you're doing, that will be contagious. I definitely make sure that people know that the energy they create is more important than the information. So, with all of this put together, I propose that we actually teach culture within typography. This is not multicultural typography. Neither is this. This is not multicultural typography. Nor is this. Or this. You know you've seen restaurants and that Chinese stuff. You know you have. It's all stupid. That's not multicultural. I mean, really, faux Hebrew? Come on. So, for you in this audience to understand typography, you need to understand the culture to which you're communicating. This is why we started India Type Camp. We had our first camp in 2009, 5 years ago, and we just had another one last week. Some of the participants are in this audience. We participated in lots of aspects of Indian culture, but we tried to make sure that they understood what they were doing and why it was important. And yes, we drank water out of coconuts. How cool is that? To you, it might not be a big deal. To us, it was cool. We saw cows. Totally cool. So yes, we were tourists in a lot of ways. But we made sure that we looked at the coconut seller and we saw the goats that he fed the coconuts to. Understood the cycle of things. Why is the cow important? We understood it. We talked about it. We discussed it. We ate only regional food and in the regional way. We looked at local markets. We participated in the culture. Yes, there's type in it too. Now, I've actually updated my slides with some things that happened last week. The top left image of the Coca-Cola sign, that was taken 5 years ago, and that was the first time any of us had seen a Tamil italic scripty gestural thing. And now it's all over. I actually just stopped taking pictures of it in Chennai last week because there were so many. So even in 5 years, I've watched lettering and type change, and now there's a lot more kind of not necessarily experimental, but more expression in the Tamil. We take pictures of everything. Graffiti, signage, you name it. It's a joy to be around people that are taking pictures of the same things you're taking pictures of, I have to say. We do columns. Everybody has a glyph that they work with, and then they create a column that works with that particular glyph. It ain't easy at all. And a lot of students struggle with it, but it's a very rewarding project. The pictures on the left are from 2009. The ones on the right are from last week. One of the cool things about the column project is that local women see what we're doing and come and join in, and that's awesome. So the woman at the top in the yellow sari, she was just a neighbor and walked by and just came, got some flour, and just started doing it. The women in the larger images, they're from last week, and I love that they're proud of what they do and they want to show that. I think that's awesome. The problem is that they started getting really competitive, and so they would be like egging each other on, and you could see them going, yeah, I can do better. And so we had like a street filled with columns, and we had to tell them to leave because we had this crowd of women, and they're all like getting competitive. So we actually had to tell them to thank you, but please leave. So anyway. We discuss lots of different aspects of the multicultural scene in India. These are images from the Musalman, which is an Urdu newspaper, handwritten every day and sent out to 21,000 different people all over India. It is the oldest newspaper in India. It is the oldest Urdu newspaper in the world. It's been going on for like 120 years or something like that, handwritten every day. Now, this tells you a lot about the idea of community. Does this matter? Yes. This came up in the research discussion yesterday. Absolutely it matters. It's preserving this wonderful script. And they think it matters enough to produce it and go through all the effort. If you're ever in Chennai, I highly recommend visiting it. All the participants learn Tamil, learn how to write Tamil, because they all get primers. They all get children's primers. So these are adults working with primers with cartoons and stuff in it. But they learn how to make the form. It's not just about looking at it, it's about understanding how it works. It starts lots of discussions. There are type designers, experienced type designers that attend type camp, as well as beginners, and all of these people are working together to look at things in a new way. They practice and practice and practice. They try it as a Didone, they try it humanist, they try it monoline. We invite sign painters, local sign painters, and have them teach us. They show us different aspects of the letter forms. What are different approaches you can take? What are different forms you can make? And they basically have a whole bunch of people worshiping everything they do. Here's some examples of last week. We asked them to show 3 different examples. A lot of personality starts showing up. Look at how he was overlapping the loops on the last glyph, and look at how the first glyph definitely changes depending on each style. This helps the participants understand that you can still do some modifications to make sure it's still readable. We talked to them, we asked them questions. The guy on the left is about to get married, so one of the signs in Latin was marriage. We're all excited about it. But we asked them to show us different styles, and that actually helps us loosen up with what we think is possible. These are images from 5 years ago where we all silk-screened posters to give back to the city of Chennai. These are an Indian theme. These were a Tamil concept with a Tamil design to a Tamil audience. We spent all week understanding what that meant. You can't just say, hey, it's Indian, and make it be Indian colors. That's what we're definitely trying to discourage. We want to make sure that it's an Indian problem with an Indian solution, not an outsider solution. This was Kristen's poster on this and that, the idea that things can be this and that and not this or that. Big thing for us to figure out. Oh, that's the top left image is of the Tata Books silk screening studio, the old one with the thatched roof. This is Lisa's poster. She felt that there was always a rhythm to the city, specifically at night, so she tried to get a bit of a rhythm with her silkscreen letters. All of these are handwritten. On the left is Jess, and she was very confused about the head bobble, whether it meant yes or no. So this is her version, her reaction to it. Everything had to be bilingual. It had to have Tamil and English. The one on the right is Todd McPhee's. His deals with how the dot, the putu, is everywhere. Top left is Sridhar. He was our only Indian participant 5 years ago. He was an employee at Adobe. He has a background in architecture, as you can tell by his amazing lettering and drawing. Bottom right is Paul Hunt, who gave a talk yesterday at Malayalam. There is no English on here, but it was such a nice poster, we forgave him for it. This year, we took a different approach. We felt that we wanted to give back in a more, I don't know, kind of useful way. So we encouraged the students to walk around the local market, see different signs, see different stalls that did not have signs, ask the stall owners what they wanted to sign, if they wanted to sign and what they wanted it to be like, and then the students designed them themselves. There was TV repair, puja materials, fish. All of these are their own ideas, their own solutions, their own Tamil drawings. Here's some of the images when they were drawing. So we had a variety from a flour mill to a fruit stand to a fancy store to fish. And then we gave them back to the stall owners. And it was a very fun experience. Some of them kind of didn't know what to do. The guy with the flour mill looks very stunned, probably because we were all taking pictures of him. But when we walked back by, this sign was in pride of place. The fancy store woman was one of my favorites. She was really, really pleased. And she came up with the name. That's what she wanted to have. So with Type Camp, we build community. We really believe in learning from each other. We absolutely want to encourage sharing information, sharing our knowledge, and we want to bypass cultural stereotypes so we can be better designers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shelley, sharing this with about 300 design young students from India. I think now they don't have any doubts that teacher coming from Canada and telling them that Indian scripts are beautiful. I hope you don't have any doubts now. And most of the city design students, I'm telling this, that there is no harm doing Indian scripts here. Okay, thank you very much. Any questions from the audience? Quickly. Okay. Thank you, doctor, for your concern. And but we really have a very short time, and I'm specially addressing to the students that complete your lunch in half an hour. I can tell you that, being a teacher of some college. And the faculty members of various design schools and applied art schools, I request them, the speakers and the felicitators, they have a separate arrangement made. So please don't stand in the queue of the students and make life easier. This is the second day. We are all know about how the things are organized now here in the campus, and I suppose that will shorten up the time. Thank you very much, and come half an hour, within half an hour. Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed, I'd like Professor Santosh Shirsagar to please honor the speakers. Yeah. 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 Professor Suniti Vadalkar, S. Sridharamurthy, and Mr. Ted Harrison. We would also like to request Mr. Mohammad Shahid and Professor D. Uday Kumar. Chaitya Munasinghe is not here, so Pathum Igodawata and Jalpa Shah to kindly contact the technical desk. And we would like Dr. Shelley to be honored as well. Yeah. We have a 30-minute lunch break, and we would like Director Sir to kindly honor Professor Santosh Shirsagar as well. Not my day, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, I already said.